Gary, can I do a segue for just a second? I just got a
Certainly.
text from Kathy.
Yep.
She's saying that the Zoom invite that was sent out on Friday as a test does not work. So I'm not sure we're gonna have anybody chiming in here at 9:30.
The meeting ID and the passcode are the same.
We're just finishing up the new owners meeting, boy. So I'll just leave you on here.
Are you going to just leave this meeting run? And
Yeah, just going to let it run.
Meeting?
I'm not sure what she's.
Okay, I don't know either. All I got is a
Can you
text.
Maybe I can try
Do you want to
joining.
resend out the link?
I'm sorry.
Do you just want to resend out the link?
And
copy the link?
Let's see.
Because I actually couldn't find it. I was going to log in so my camera worked, but I couldn't find it.
Hey, Lisa, make sure you send that information to Tommy.
I sent it to
Friday.
Tommy and Todd.
Same meeting for Friday for tomorrow?
Yes.
So really, you just click Zoom and then type in, go to join a meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
There's no.
I know I've lost the number.
I've never sent out an invite. So let's see if that works. And
Meaning you just sent something to Kathy, or?
yeah,
Okay.
I just sent something to Kathy.
Thank you.
Is the board meeting a closed meeting, Gary, for just the board members, or is it a?
No.
No, it's open for all owners. Yeah, so James, and maybe we should just share this with everyone. We have, how many board meetings a year? 4? We have 4 board meetings a year, one in May, one in September, which is tied to the annual owners meeting. And that's actually dictated in our bylaws or in our documents that we have to do the second
Show that I know.
Friday of September, if I remember correctly.
Well, it's the annual meeting has to be on the second Friday of
Yeah.
September.
Yeah.
The board meeting could be
There
anytime.
we go.
And we have a board meeting in
I went to
November,
it.
end of
Yeah.
October-ish, something like that, where we do our budget, and we have a board meeting in January, early February. All are open to all owners. And we do them via, historically, we've been doing them by GoToMeeting. We decided to try Zoom out for this, just because we kind of felt like it was more familiar for folks, and it's, a lot of people have been doing Zoom meetings. So this is really a test for us to use Zoom. They are recorded and posted so that if you want to go back and review them, or if you don't have the opportunity to attend them, then you can go back and view the recording.
Can we hope for some drama and some entertainment in the board meetings, or?
Yeah, well, we chased that away about 5 years ago.
We don't even have donuts.
That's right, we don't.
We didn't invite
We didn't invite our
Jennifer
insurance
Wade.
person.
Jennifer Wade.
Right.
Or Ann. And
Ann
a
used
board
to-
member
yeah.
who used to come through, help us out. Man.
I emailed back to Kathy with the link. I don't know if she's still having difficulty.
All right, so everybody stays on the same link though for this meeting, right?
Yeah.
Well, why don't we take a 5-minute break, because we got to get started on the board meeting here in just a few minutes. Want to do that?
I don't care.
Okay.
Joe?
Yes, sir.
Oh.
Delaware. Maybe it's Joe Biden.
I'm calling Joe.
What should my response be?
Go back to your basement.
Go back to your basement. I was thinking of something a little more extreme than that.
Okay, this is a non-political meeting.
Yes, sir.
It looks like Kathy's going to be on here.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Boy, Kathy got in it, I think everyone else is.
Hi, Ron. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
How you feeling?
Doing all right?
Did you drive up?
Is Kathy attending remotely?
Yeah.
Yes.
She's here, but she's attending remote.
Okay.
She's on the property, but attending remotely.
One of those folks who's trying to balance work and pleasure.
I've got a few things for what goes on at home, but it absolutely is there. Okay. I just want to make sure you got, you know, the ability to do bills online. Oh, I don't. The ability to get an update on maintenance requests online. Absolutely. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Weather the storm and bad weather, okay? Yeah, probably then you see it. Wow.
That's part of your territory, you're in sulfur and like it's just not even. It looks like Kathy might be having difficulty connecting to audio.
Yeah, so they're coming our way.
I did not know that.
Two went to the right on the East Coast and the rest of us.
Two was coming off of Africa.
Yeah, and then you got in the water that plane had that, so. Not good.
Where you're at, you're far enough inland and
Yeah, we got the Brazos River happens.
how close are you?
All right.
We have the board's all here, right? Yeah.
All here.
Well, any reason why we can't call this to order? How many, is that everybody that's
That's
on the
everybody.
meeting?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's going to be new owner / board meeting.
That's right.
Okay. All right, well, it is 9:36. We can call this to order. You want to do the
Certainly.
roll call and quorum?
We have a form present. We have Lloyd and Kathy is dialed in. I believe everyone else is here in person. We did have a meeting properly noticed. And then also had meeting information online. We're here to log in tomorrow.
Okay.
Next item is approval of the minutes from our 5/20 meeting. The minutes were compiled and posted with no changes. I make a motion to accept the minutes.
Have a motion?
So moved. I'll second.
All right. We got Eric and Rick.
Okay.
Okay.
All in favor, say
We
aye.
got to vote. All in favor. Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. 7-0.
All right, well, I want to welcome everybody to the board meeting. Since I know we have mostly new owners on the call, as I mentioned earlier, this is a little unusual in that we're not in person. Typically, this week is our most active board meeting, as well as we typically have a reception tonight. We have our owners meeting in person tomorrow. We normally have, 50 or so people at those meetings. So this is a little unusual, but we make the best of the situation given what we're dealing with. This is also the time of year that we elect our new board members. We sent those items out by mail, those ballots out by mail. Everybody should have received them and returned them. We also have the opportunity for people to turn in those ballots tomorrow. How are we doing that? Where's Elisa?
Elisa, what was the last
What
number?
we decided the ballots for everybody on site?
We're gonna have the accountant's staff member posted outside in the hallway,
Okay.
the ballot box,
Okay.
for anybody who kind of drops by.
What's the current tally?
I have to look back.
I mean,
It's
count.
150 something, the last.
And we need 132.
Right. Sans 3 or 4 disqualified ballots due to past due assessments. You'll have a quorum.
Okay. right, so, if there is anybody that is on site, there will be, and hasn't turned in their ballot, they have the opportunity to turn in that ballot tomorrow. So, other than that, I think it's important to note that this is kind of a, who do we have calling? Boyd? Boyd's already on. Boyd, you still there? Boyd, did we lose you?
Yeah.
Okay, you're back. Okay. Great. All right. What I was going to say is this has kind of been a year of transition for us. For those of you who are not aware, we last year hired a general manager who was with us for about 5 months, ended up deciding that he wanted to go back to be closer to his family. His name was Steve O'Rourke, and he left in June. Opportunistically, we had an opportunity to hire Elisa Oliger, who has been our accountant for 18 years, Elisa?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So Elisa had worked for our accounting firm, and she happened to be available at the same time. So we brought Elisa on board to really manage the front desk operations and do all and manage the business operations. Additionally, as those of you who have been around for a while, Dave had indicated, or had asked us, Dave Dunn last year had asked us to begin planning for him to slow down. So we had the opportunity to hire to Tim Broran, who is here as well. So I'm going to kind of turn it over to each of y'all to let you kind of introduce yourselves, if that's okay.
So I'm Elisa Oliger, and yeah, I've been around Tamaron for 18 years. I came here as a kid as well. I remember the grand old areas back on that's been torn down. Came here for prom in the 80s. So I'm a Tamaron girl at heart. I love being here. It's been about 3.5 months as a real employee, so that feels good. Got a good handle on the front desk. I thank you all for being patient with them in a time of transition and strangeness for all the new rules and things. But that's about it.
Tim, want to introduce yourself?
My name's Tim Broran. Previously lived in Evergreen for a dozen years or so. Started a CBD business 3 or 4 years ago, and then the COVID thing hit us pretty hard in March. We had chosen to move here because we love this part of the country in February. And so when things slowed down, started looking for opportunities, and this one popped up. My wife, Sashada, worked at the front desk, and she made me aware of it. And, I was grateful to have our stars aligned so I could come on board and utilize my experiences in construction and property management.
Thanks, guys. And then I think the other thing, when I talk about transition, for those of you who are not aware, Julie Houston has been on site here. I have no idea how long Julie's been on site here. Do y'all know?
I think it's like 11 years.
11 years, something like that. So we've had an on-site real estate operation here. It was the Wells Group. Julie left the Wells Group and moved over to Sotheby's, I guess, last year. Julie has probably listed damn near every property that's ever sold here, 90% of them at least, and has been on site. She lives in Glacier. She has decided to retire and is currently closing out her listing. She's brought on Julie Glenn, and I'm hopeful that Julie Glenn will participate in meetings and the owners meeting tomorrow to introduce herself. That on-site office is still here. We actually just signed a lease with Sotheby's so that they will stay here on site. I will tell you that if they don't join tomorrow, I'll just give you a quick rundown. We have had probably the most active year we've ever had on the real estate side. That's partially due to COVID, I think, to a degree, but it's also because we've got some financing opportunities that we haven't had in the past. So last I heard, we only had 2 units in inventory, which historically there's been 15 to 20 at any given point in time, and in some cases, many more than that. So been a very active year. But Julie Houston is starting her retirement. She is taking about a 6-month hiatus, I think, to go cruise on her boat. But Julie Glynn will be here on site managing listings going forward. So, as I said, it's been a year of transition for us. It'll continue, as we get the new staff engaged here. You'll continue to see some upgrades, as Tim was alluding to earlier on the new owners meeting. We're looking at some software upgrades to help with maintenance and assessment payments and things like that. So you'll continue to see some changes done there. I guess we move to review of financials.
Okay. I'm not on camera, but this is Joe Carey, and I'm going to give the financial report. Reporting for financials through August. Gary, do you have the report you could throw up there?
Which one do you need? August 2020 financials?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's through the 31st, though, right?
He said
2020.
Oh, 20.
So we want to.
So while Gary's getting that set up there, I'll just make a couple of overview comments. Again, this is reporting through the month of August. There's been a lot of effects, due to the pandemic. Everybody knows about that. Not all of them are negative. There's actually been a few positives, and I'll comment on those as I go through this when you see some of the numbers. So Gary, if you got, all right. So we've got the balance sheet up there. Just pointing out some highlights on there. If you look at lines 103, 107, and 108, that's those three accounts in different banks represent our total reserves, which totals up to $766,013. So we've got healthy reserves there. There'll be some removals from there for the elevator project, the South Tower elevator project soon, before the end of the year. That project gets kicked off, I believe, isn't it next week?
21st.
Yeah, 21st of September, okay. And then there's also some contributions to reserves that'll be put back in there as well. So we'll end the year with a little bit less money in there than that due to the puts and takes, but otherwise pretty healthy. Two things to point out, looking at last year versus this year, our total liquid assets, total checking and savings at 1.2 million. That's more than we had last year. Last year we had 1.08 million, so we're a little healthier on cash this year than we were last year. Also down there are accounts receivable. Right there, 34,000 and change. And that mostly represents unpaid owner assessments that have been billed but are yet to be paid. And that's less than half of what it was last year. Last year, the unpaid assessments at this point was about 72,000. So healthier there. That's one of the things that I really expected to be a downside with the whole coronavirus thing. Colorado even has a law on the books that people can claim a detriment. Hardship. A hardship. Thank you. Claim a hardship and be relieved of debt payments and leaving creditors with not as much horsepower as they had before to collect those debts. However, for whatever reason, our unpaid assessments are much lower this year than last year and even prior years. So we only have a handful of people who are behind on their assessments right now. And half of those are units that are on the market for sale. Under contract for sale and be closing, and we'll get the payments when those happen. So really good shape there. That's really all I had on the balance sheet. If you want to flip, Gary, to the next page, which is the First page of the income statements. We have delayed quarterly billings on a number of items here, line 404, 408, 416. All of those are looking lower than they would actually be if these reports were generated for September, which would include July, August, and September's numbers. So the bottom line really is, you look at the bottom line on income, we're actually 1.4 million on income rather than 1.37. And really, the only real downside there is the maintenance revenue. We basically were not shut down, but we had reduced hours and short staff for most of March and April. And so a lot of work that might have got done didn't and was deferred. So that's the main reason we have less income than we would normally have. Otherwise, that looks pretty good. Moving down to administrative expenses. Big thing to highlight on that one is the 512 legal fees. For the first year in a lot of years, we're experiencing much lower legal fees than we've had in the past. Probably mostly because a lot of that is to do with getting after owners who are behind on their assessments, filing liens, things like that. We've had very little of that to do. Really, the only thing we've got going right now from a legal standpoint is the water and sewer contract negotiations. And I think Jerry Q2 will give you more detail on that when he does his presentation on that. Let's see what else we got here. Director's expenses are down because due to the pandemic, there's less travel. We've had less people coming to the board meetings, more doing it remotely. Let's see. Auditing and consulting fees will come right up to where it's supposed to be when we get the bill for our annual audit, which is being is he done with that yet, Elisa, or is he finished?
As far as I know.
Yeah, okay. But we were talking about it as late as yesterday. So I believe Todd Beckstead from Grand Junction will be presenting on that at the annual meeting tomorrow, the owners meeting tomorrow. Annual meeting expenses, obviously way down because we're not doing any of the peripheral activities. That's going to be it. Out of a $7,500 budget, we're only going to spend $1,200 because of and that was just the mailing and copying expenses to get the information out. So total expenses are down quite a bit from where they would normally be at this point. 198,000 versus 243, so looking really good there. Some of that will catch up later in the year, but I think we're going to end up on administrative expenses quite below budget this year. Going down to going down to 600 accounts. Yep, scroll back down a little bit here. Down.
I am scrolling down.
No, or I meant back up again. Yeah. Okay, right there. Yeah. So let's see. 612 building maintenance. Again, those expenses are down because, like I said, we were short-staffed. Just like the revenue's down, the expenses are already down. But that'll catch up some, but it probably will finish under budget at the end of the year. Snow removal looks real good, right on budget, and we've got enough buffer in there for November and December if the snow flies early and heavy this year. Roof repairs is way down, 620, but we're doing those now, and that money will be spent. Grounds, again, slow start in the spring due to the pandemic.
Should catch up on some of that, but probably won't really end up under budget on that one as well. All the exterior maintenance budgets, Pinecone is being worked right now, and the other three areas will all be getting done before the snow flies, and so those budgets will all be fully spent as they usually are. Down to 640. I'm down to the 640s, Gary. 649, that shouldn't be zero. There's probably some journal entries that need to be made because I was talking to Dave about this, Elisa, and there's possibly some things that are in building maintenance that probably should be in that account. So we'll true that up before the end of the year. Computer, copier, and office supplies is over budget. As we bought a lot of computers. We bought the 2 new computers, and we also made the investment in the CMMS system to the tune of, what is that, about 5,000? 4,500. So we're going to be a little over budget on that, but it's investing in technology is a good thing, so we should benefit from that in the long run. 656 energy monitoring alarms is down, but we do a lot of that in the fall with testing and service that happens then. And that's pretty much all I had on the 600 accounts. Again, we're quite a ways under budget on that as well, so looking good there. Personnel expenses, we've been down 1 or 2 maintenance staff people pretty much the whole year. But we have done some recent hiring. Where are you at right now, Tim? Are we still 1 short, or are we gonna, when you make this hire, the hire you made yesterday, are we full staff now, or are we still 1 down?
I think we're probably half of a full person.
After a full person down, okay. Any plans on that one?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. So we may end up, we probably will end up close to, but not over budget on salaries this year, on maintenance staff. Water and sewer. Again, Jerry Q2 will give you he's going to give a presentation on this, and he may get into a little detail that might help explain why we're way underspent on water and sewer. But briefly, and without getting into a whole lot of detail, we do have a negotiation going on with Glacier over the rates, the rate structure.
I'm going to just drop this.
And the fact that Taco believes, we believe that there's some components of that rate structure that we're not under any obligation to pay. And our lawyer supports this. And so for the last 3 months, we've been deducting those components from the payments and short paying the water. So we're paying for the water, but not paying for the components that we don't believe we are under obligation to pay.
Have you got any feedback from Glacier on us, the fact that we're doing that? I mean, I haven't heard anything in the calls, but they know what we're up to.
Except the fact that on the last bill, they charged us late fees. No. For May and June, they didn't charge us late fees. July, they charged us late fees. And we didn't pay those either.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
So that could end up all truing up towards the end of the year when in the final negotiation, whether we decide to pay all or part of those disputed amounts. We'll see how that goes. For the first time in a long time, satellite TV and internet are all right where they're supposed to be. We got all those contracts done and everything's good there. Electricity's running a little bit over. I think it's probably going to end up slightly over budget for the end of the year. I had Elisa check yesterday, and September through December, our total electricity cost last year was about $27,000. So add that to the 93 that we've currently spent, and you're going to be a little over 113. So we'll see where that ends up. Other than that, you look at the bottom line, and we've got a lot of cushion there. We're looking really good. So, do you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay.
Good news.
Yeah. Capital. All right. So you see a lot of zeros in the year-to-date column there, and that's partly because a lot of these things don't get done until the fall months after the summer busy season ends. And then partly because we were short-staffed, short hours, and things not much happening between March, the middle of March and the middle of May. But most of those areas where you see zeros are going to get filled in. Let me see if there's anything there. Yeah, not really. I mean, there's just a lot of things that'll get caught up before the end of the year.
At least we're not having to shovel snow today.
Right. One, yeah. South elevator, the Lodge South elevator, 820. We've had to make some advance payments for materials and to get that project started with the vendor, and we'll end up spending that entire $191,000 on that project. Go ahead to the next page, Gary. Reserves. So this is a snapshot of what the reserves look like today. When you look at the balance, that doesn't comport to the balance that I showed on the back. You know, the total amount we have in the bank that I showed on the balance sheet. This is just 2020's activity. Interest income. We're probably going to fall a little bit short on that. Rates are dropping. Most of our CDs right now that are in two banks that we have with Stearns and First Internet Bank of Indiana. Most of those CDs are longer term, and they're in the 2.5% to 3%, like 2.5 to 2.7% range. However, CD rates have dropped recently, and so when we get our renewals, we're looking at CD rates in the 1.2 to 1.3% range. So we're suffering some lower returns on that due to that. Rental revenue on Unit 110, that hasn't been posted yet. We talked about that yesterday in our meeting with the CPA, Tommy Meadows, and that'll all be transferred from the revenue account on the first page where it is now into the reserves, and we'll do that once before year end, right? Is that what we decided to do? Yeah, okay. And then I might mention too, that unit is now vacant. The tenant, his lease expired August 31st and he moved out, and I've got it advertised for rent right now. If you know somebody who needs a place, Taco has a rental place for sale. For rent. The only other thing on there, the elevator project cost to $191,000, or it's not $191K. It's forget how much we were supposed to put in there from the reserves, but that isn't posted yet either, and it will be before the end of the year. And lastly, the front desk / rental program. There's some interesting stuff going on here. First of all, if you look at 460 admin fees, this is the $5 per night that Taco charges every rental night, $5 per night. And you can see it's a huge number, and that's because of huge rentals we've had this year. I'm looking at an email that Heather sent out this morning, and July and August increases in rental occupancy in July and August, 95.5% for July and 172.8% for August. we've had a lot of people coming here because they're getting away from Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico. Place has been busy this summer.
Yeah, that you think about, Joe, that's really amazing. Last year we had how many weddings? Maybe 20.
Yeah,
This year we've had one, and it's all been people getting away from COVID.
yeah.
You know, all of our rental base from the last couple of years has kind of disappeared because there are no weddings,
Yeah.
and yet they've all been replaced.
Yep.
We had one memorable wedding though.
I didn't go there.
So when you look at those numbers, and I've mentioned this to some of the rest of you along the way here, I've been amazed at, well, it shouldn't be, because talking about the resort fees that we also collect at the front desk through reservations and then turn over to Glacier. $25 per night resort fee for the use of the fitness facility and the pools and all that. For the months of June, July, and August, the total is right at $100,000. Money turned over to Glacier for resort fees, and it's all on rentals. It's incredible numbers. And then what makes that even more interesting is if you look at 472 and 473 lines, they're under budget. And these are long-term rental admin fees, $45 a night,
Yes.
$45 a month?
Yes.
Yeah. So the reason those are down is because while we budgeted for 25 long-term rentals for this year, we're down to 15. Same thing with 473. While we budgeted for 105 short-term rentals, we're down to 92. The reason for that is the trend is new people buying units, and we've had a lot of turnover. Eric mentioned the real estate. More people than not are not buying the units as investments to rent. They're using it themselves and not renting them at all. So that's a trend we're seeing. Balance those out, and if you add in the July, August, and September numbers for source 472 and 473, we're actually about 20K or 10K over budgeted revenues for this account for the front desk and rental program. So looking real good. Salaries, we've taken a hard look at salaries on the front desk. We've had turnover in the past. Elisa's come on and she's looked at this. She's managing the front desk now, and we've talked about, you know, who we've got, what we're paying them, and how much we want to keep people and keep a steady staff with as little turnover as possible. So we've upped the salaries, the hourly rates a little bit on most everybody at the front desk. So we're going to be a little over budget on that probably by the end of the year. But with the revenue situation, we're probably going to end up in good shape. Any questions?
Any questions from anybody online? Any questions?
Okay, that's.
I haven't seen any pop up. So
Can we go through the listing and find out who's online, who is with us?
Yeah.
sure. Hang on a second. Let me stop sharing. There's the participants.
Okay. Does anybody have questions on the financials here or anybody online? Are they able to unmute themselves?
They can unmute
Okay.
themselves.
No questions.
Okay, that's the report. We're in good shape.
Good work, good news.
Yep.
Okay, well, let's move to reports. And I just noticed that I left something off the agenda on the bylaw changes, so we'll have to address that we'll do that at the end. Off the agenda, I mean. So let's start with, what do we got? 3 architectural review requests?
We've got 7.
Seven.
Seven.
Seven. Dave, are you out there shopping architectural reviews? All right.
Okay, so first one is unit 728. And it's an end unit and they need to vent their oven. So they are requesting approval of a vent to go out the side wall. And it's pretty straightforward. He submitted a picture of the vent.
Did they change the location of where it was before? They didn't have it vented before?
They probably didn't have it vented before or had one of those recirculating vents, that, you know, which a lot of them do, and they probably put an overhead vent in and want to stick it out through the wall.
Okay.
Yeah, it's here's a picture of the vent. It's kind of cut off, but it'll go out the side, so shouldn't be a problem. And then second one, it's on here, but there's other units that have done it, and what they were asking for was to put some shades on their back deck that could just roll down for the sun. And then when they roll them up, they're hidden behind the wood on the back deck.
What unit is that?
701. And we had given them tentative approval and let them install them. And so that was just one where we were going to do a formal approval. And I've seen a couple of other units that have them that didn't request for architectural review approval. And everybody seems to be following it so far, keeping them rolled up to where the only time you see them is when they're down. So, okay, the next one is unit 621, 622. And what they want to do is add some windows on the side. They talked to the next, it's an end unit. We talked to the next unit owner, and they said they don't have any problems with the windows. So they've been told that they need to meet the color requirements, and they'd be responsible for any issues arising from installation. Next one, unit 732. They want to add a fireplace and chimney. Again, fairly common request. Shouldn't be any issues. They've been told they would be responsible for any issues arising from cutting into the exterior of the unit.
Is that gonna vent through the roof? In that case, you say chimney, and then,
Yes, it will.
yes, all right, thank you, David.
I believe so. Yes, it's through the roof. Okay, the next one was unit 824. And their request was for actually three things. Two of them were, it's an end unit windows, and then they also want to install a fireplace. The third thing was a deck to be installed off the side of the unit. And my opinion on the deck is we should not approve that. I don't think that we should allow any new decks added to what's existing here. I think we'd just be asking for a lot of problems.
Historical perspective on that, years and years and years ago, units 514 and 515 requested to put a deck off the side of the end of this building up at the top. The board denied it.
I mean, for them, it would be, yeah, it would be great view and everything, but there's several issues that arise from that, you know. Responsibility for maintaining it, the common elements issue, just a lot of things. It wouldn't be covered during the winter time. And I just think that we want to maintain the integrity of what we have here. And I don't believe we should allow the deck. The windows in the fireplace are fine, but I would recommend we don't approve the request for the deck.
Yeah, again, to add to what Joe said, from a historical perspective, it's just 2 years ago, we had a request from an owner to do a project that required use of common element space here in the lodge. We put that to a vote of the ownership. The ownership resoundingly defeated that. To me, this is, again, using common elements to do a deck. I can't imagine that we would go vote against what the ownership voted for just 2 years ago.
Yep.
Good point.
Okay, so then the next one is unit 565. And what the owners wanted to do is just install windows above the doors on her back deck. She had originally had talked to me about putting a gable end up, and it's up in High Point, and the construction of the units up there is significantly different than what it is in Gamble and Pinecone. And it would be much more involved. The cost would be at least double what it has been for other ones. So I told her that she would probably be looking in excess of 60,000. And from talking to Dave, to add a gable up in High Point, you have to go into the walls inside a unit in Gamble or in High Point. So it would involve taking down the sheetrock on the inside and reinforcing and everything. So it's very involved.
So she didn't ever get an engineer's drawing and the approval?
No. Once I explained all that to her, she said, well, then what about if I just added windows above the doors to let more light in? And I said, probably wouldn't be an issue. And so she's submitted that request, just to add windows above her doors, in existing ones.
Non-opening windows, kind of?
Yeah, non-opening windows, not affecting the roof in any way. She wanted to add what she told me was 2 windows that would be lateral above the doors. And then the last one is in unit 761. And what they're asking is just to add windows. It's an end unit. 2 windows on the side, and then an awning window. And what that is, just one that the bottom opens out of a bathroom. And that would go over to a deck that is unique to their unit, so that it doesn't affect anybody else walking underneath it.
Okay, just for everybody on the phone, we are aware that you're having some audio issues. We're not sure what to do to fix it, to be honest with you. Any ideas?
Nothing has changed here,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure what it is.
No, it's just a little bit of static on my end, but I think it does definitely come from Gary's computer somehow.
Are you sure you don't have the mic on that computer as well as this one?
I think you can only use one.
We'll try to see if you can turn your mic off and see if it changes anything.
let's do, I'll tell you what.
Because a lot of times I do these Zoom things all the time, and usually it's a microphone issue. Can you all still hear us?
Kathy, can you still hear?
Yes, yes, and now it is gone.
Guilty as charged.
Scott, you're on a roll today. That's 2 technical problems you solved just by
Do you have
taking a
any idea
stab
how
at
many
it.
damn Zoom go-to meeting and
Yeah.
Microsoft Teams meetings I've been on for the last month, 9 months, 6 months?
Yeah, Scott, we need an IT guy. You wanna apply? Pretty on these things. You know your way around the computer there.
Okay, so
So
from what I gathered, you have
everything is requests that is nothing new. We've approved them in the past with the exception of the deck on 824, 825. And I would recommend that we approve all the requests with the exception of the exterior deck.
before we go there, Dave, do you have any comments on any of these, Mark?
The only one I have is 565. That's, your description doesn't match what got turned into me.
Okay.
So we may have to get more. What Tom McDermott told me was replacing existing windows on the second floor from fixed to opening. He didn't say anything about over top of the sliders.
Well, if it's just replacing windows, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah. Yeah. If that's what it is. Okay.
And Tom
Okay, I
said-
looked at 565 and I was going by what the conversation she and I had.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I just have the information Tom gave me, and I just got it yesterday, so I didn't have much time to follow up on it, but my understanding it was changing fixed to operating, and I think it's the clear story windows up above.
Okay. And that would be no issue as
Okay.
long as they meet the requirements for coloring.
Okay, and I guess one other, on 761, actually, one of the windows on the side is already existing. They're just adding the one above it, the trapezoid window. So there already is an existing window there.
Okay, so then you made a motion to approve all of the requests
All the
other
requests
than
other than the
the
deck.
deck, subject to,
Approval by maintenance for coloring and understanding they take responsibility for any issues that arise.
I don't know why
okay.
John Niebling sent me a text message. Do owners still have to sign a document affirming that they will take financial responsibility for any alteration?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, so we have a motion,
I'll second it
we have a second.
so we can have a discussion.
Any discussion?
I would just, on 701, this is the back shade. I would ask that either the ARC or our team document standards, because otherwise we're going to have, all kinds of tarps and all kinds of shades, popping up all over. I think we talked a little about this one. I think comes from Lowe's that they had proposed. Was it Home Depot? Yeah, one of these two, and let's specify colors, just like we do on windows. Let's have some standards get ahead of the game here, so that we don't end up having to go back to people saying, well, you can't put up, one that says Oakland Raiders, or you can't put up one that says something else.
Houston Texans.
Yeah, the ones in 701 do match the existing color of the wood.
Yeah, the ones in 701 are earth, they're
Yeah.
a brown tone. Yeah.
Yeah, and my only concern with those was that, if the owners are here and they have them up, I think that's fine. My concern would be it's a second home, they leave them there, wind picks up, they get blown to, and then we're dealing with a maintenance issue or dealing with a mess. Yeah, I'd hate to see like those bamboo ones put up.
I was just thinking that those bamboo ones are
Right.
they're even less than bamboo. They're like tubular plastic tubes that are sewn together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they get faded, they get dilapidated looking, they warp. So yeah, I'm with Eric. I think some kind of standards on what you can do and what, and maybe require that they be taken down in the wintertime.
Yeah.
They're tucked up behind the beam.
Yeah.
So they're pretty well protected. They keep them rolled up in bad weather when they're not
Well,
there.
if they're rolled up and secured, I guess that's okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
and they're tucked in out of sight from everywhere, but inside
Yeah.
the unit. when they're-
Yeah, they can't be hung below the beam. They have to be behind it.
Yeah, that's probably also something we should put in the requirements is
Yeah.
they need to be not visible
When they're
when
retracted.
they're retracted. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other ones I'd seen, that was the case because I'd seen them playing golf in one time, and then I didn't see them again for a while, and I never could tell which units had them until they were down. And the other ones have all been the same color, the brown color of the wood. So.
So are we saying that they need to be retracted every evening or you're saying you don't want them down
I just,
when you leave property, and I'm with that, so.
yeah, I don't know.
And the request initially was just to use
They're to
their,
block the sun. So,
yeah, they get the morning sun and they want it for the morning sun. And that they said they would retract them.
701 gets the afternoon sun.
Okay, yeah.
Sure you get a lot. It'll vary.
So,
I'm just thinking if we put enough, then we can kind of standardize these and it'll go kind of like the windows. I mean, we could even delegate this to Dave, Tim, to, when we have to bring them back to the arc. If we
Yeah.
Write enough constraints in here, then we've got a standard procedure and a standard product.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is people have been doing this and we didn't know about it until somebody asked permission. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you don't see it.
all right. I'm in agreement with that. Any other discussion? Okay, there's no comments or anything online?
Nope.
Well, we have a motion, we have a second. We all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Is Boyd still on?
Boyd's there, yeah.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, the motion was made by Rick, correct?
Yeah.
Second by Eric.
Second by Eric.
I'll send you what I've got for the revised statement. Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's all I'm clear. Who will write the standards?
I think you volunteer.
Well, I'll help.
It's a great idea.
All right. Just so long as we get it done.
Yeah.
We can get together.
Okay.
All right. Our favorite topic,
Jesus.
rules and regs.
Our favorite guy.
And Ray, that's always a good topic.
So, and we talked about this in the new owners meeting, but since some folks have joined, this year has been a little bit of a challenge with rules and regs. Just a lot more traffic. With a lot more traffic, obviously, we get a lot more concerns. I won't call them complaints, but concerns on people following rules and regs. So we're going to have somewhat of a media update here, I think.
Okay. If you want to do the update later, we're looking at organizational, those changes, we'll do that later.
If we can just do it now, that's fine too. But when it's,
You want to discuss what we talked about yesterday, and you, I think, have several other suggestions as well, but you want to,
Well, okay, yeah, well, we had that meeting
and
yesterday.
then I'm sorry, and then after that, we'll go through some individual issues.
okay, that's fine. I mean, I was in the meeting yesterday, so you guys don't have to do that.
Yeah, we had a meeting yesterday of Gary and Elisa and Tim and Ron and I. Everybody else? And, I kind of suggested we had that meeting, and Ron was here. This was on Tuesday. And what I kind of put out there was that, there was, I don't want to say it was confusion, but there was, rules and regs has been handed off, and it's bounced around, and we've done it, the procedures have been fairly consistent, but who's the point person, who's the one that hands down the fines, who's the one that receives the complaints. That's kind of moved around over the years. And Tim and I talked about it, Lisa and I have talked about it. And the idea for the meeting yesterday, Tuesday, was to establish what the roles are for Gary and Tim and Lisa as far as rules and regs, because it's one of those things that we want to move back off of the board and put it more on the people that are on the property all the time.
Great.
And so Tim was gonna, he probably hasn't done it yet, but Tim was gonna write something up on what he thought, how this should all go down. And that would be something that procedures are the same. It's just who's implementing them.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense. I mean, having the board involved, other than the summer months and a couple of months in the winter, most of us aren't here. We aren't visually seeing what's going on, and being able to verify what the complaint is, what the issue is, being able to go look at, the unit or whatever the case may be, makes a heck of a lot more sense for somebody that's here on site.
Sure. And we have procedures in place for, levying fines, what the fines should be, repeat offenses and so on and so forth. And we talked about it that, once you get up to a certain level of levying heavy fines, then maybe you get the board to, weigh in on that, approve, disapprove.
Yeah.
But as far as the routine stuff, the first and second, third pass, keep that at the property level.
Good deal. All right, sounds good. All right, the only other item I've got, excuse me, I'm losing my voice, is we had an owner submit a lengthy document several weeks ago about rules and regulations, and from their standpoint, from the owner's standpoint, they weren't seeing anything being done with complaints and why these things going on and nothing's been done about it. So I made several phone calls to this person and had some pretty good conversations about rules and regulations and making sure that people understand that this is not just a quick process. You actually have 3 different steps to look at. And first off, you have the alleged offense, you have the investigation, and then you have what the outcome is. And it's that simple. And so I think one of the problems that we face is that people aren't aware of how the process works. So that's an education thing that we'll always, I guess, have to deal with. So this same person then was talking about some other things that didn't really apply. We can't control how many people are in someone's condo. It's 5 too many, it's 15 too many, 20 too many, whatever. So I think there's some confusion there on fire laws and fire department involved, things like that. So we've got past that. And so what the person finally agreed to do is have a camera with them. They'll take pictures when they see these things and then get those turned in a timely fashion. One of the things I think that Tim's going to work on is we'll look at putting together an email address or some way that people can contact us immediately for speed and whatnot if they do have a complaint. And so that'll be coming down the pack as well. My other comment back to the owner that wrote page after page of material was it was great information, and certainly submit ideas that you have them as they come in, but wanted to make sure that she understood what the process was, and I think it was hopefully it was a positive event. I don't think a lot of people still realize what's involved. We don't just sit here and issue fines and write warnings all day. We don't do that, do we, Gary? No, we don't do that. But so I think part of it is just getting people acclimated as to what the rules and regulations is about, and then how we handle complaints that come up. So in the end, at the end of the day, this person I think seemed somewhat satisfied, and I'll be sending some pictures in soon. One of the other topics also that came up this month was having parties and large groups having events on our property. And do we want to at some point look at possibly hiring maybe security or whatever to work these events when we have large groups? That's just a thought. We're really pretty much planning into that. But something to think about, because there's confusion again as to who's in charge, who needs to be called if there's a problem with an event. And there's still a lot of people don't understand, as an owner, I'm responsible for my unit and for what goes on in my unit. So yeah, I may be 2,000 miles away from here, but that doesn't make it any different regarding my unit and what I'm responsible for. So I think that's, again, part of the education process. So other than that, it was, I think, quiet month.
Well, just to be clear, the first line of defense for any complaint needs to be to call the front desk, period. The front desk knows, who's in the unit. Is it a tenant? Is it an owner? They will call the unit. To the extent it is a leased property, they will call the property manager on it. If it's managed by a property manager, or contact the owner if it's an issue. If the police do need to get involved, they will take care of calling the authorities after they've taken whatever action they've taken at the front desk if it's not satisfied. But that's really the first thing we need to do. We can't police everything that happens in every unit. All we can do is make sure that it gets reported and let the front desk handle it and let them make the determination on what the best thing to do given the situation. I know, I think somebody had a question on how they should report something, right? Was that the only question up there on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And I said that that's going to be outlined in what Tim is drawing up.
Right.
He's drafted.
Just to compliment what you just said, not everything happens in a unit. In fact, a lot of things happen out in common areas. So even if you don't know whose unit is and you don't know who they are, the first response is to call the front desk.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, because if something's happening in the parking lot, I mean, we don't even know what damn unit they're staying in. So, that's the only thing we can do is report it. We did discuss, and Ron mentioned this, we only had one wedding this year. It was a big wedding. They happened to rent a bunch of units. I think most of them in Pinecone, right?
They were all over.
They were all over?
Yeah.
Okay. It was a wedding. People were out in the parking lot, yapping up a storm and making a lot of noise. And again, the only thing we can do is report it to the front desk. If the authorities need to be called, they can handle that. We did talk about the idea of possibly requiring security be hired, and that might be something we consider in the future. If somebody has a lot of people here and they're renting a bunch of units, maybe we do have require that they hire a security guard just to drive the property and make sure that people understand that 10 o'clock is quiet time, and we need to enforce it.
One of the things Greg and I talked about last night is, and maybe anticipating, if you know you're going to have one of those events, maybe that's the day you call the sheriff, the county sheriff, and say, could you drive through tonight about 11 o'clock, or some, just, we are taxpayers, we are residents here, we do have some right to call and ask for some preemptive security patrols. And
Do we?
I don't think we do. I don't know if I'm asking the question.
You can ask at UPS for a holiday weekend. That's one thing we'd always do is contact and just ask for extra patrols. Some other information regarding that. My cousin is a deputy sheriff. I asked him what the rate is. And if you contract somebody through the sheriff's office, it's going to be between $50 and $65 an hour. And another thing that we have to consider is Colorado just changed their law removing immunity away from officers. So my cousin had said pretty much unless there's a felony in progress, they may not respond up here because officers just don't want to get involved right now.
We did have that incident once, and they definitely won't respond to enforce our rules and regulations. Right? So people being outside loud in the parking lot isn't breaking the law, it's just breaking our rules. We tried it once. They said they wouldn't respond because there was no laws being broken.
Okay, Dottie had a question on rules and regs. If you have an enforcement or you have an issue with something that is a concern that someone's breaking rules and regs, please report it to Gary. If you need to copy anybody on the board, copy Ron. Ron is our rules and regs chair, so he will get involved as he needs to. And certainly copy Elisa as well.
Tim too.
And Tim too.
Okay, the other thing I would.
Just don't copy the whole board.
Yeah. The other thing I would certainly add is, while we do appreciate, violations concerning dogs or people to take pictures, we don't encourage people to go out in the middle of the night when there's a ruckus going on and take a picture and endangering your own life.
Right.
Do not feel like you should be policing the area or the activity. That do not take risks that to your own person. Because there was some talk of that. And you encourage, absolutely tell people, leave your handguns at home. Don't go out there and play sheriff and deputy, okay?
And call a front desk. I think that's the most important thing, and let the front desk handle it. Because some of these people we've had in the past, some issues is where they wanted some people involved. Like Eric's here with his 5 kids, and kids were raised in ruckus, so people end up going and driving the person responsible, and that's not, call a front desk, they'll take care of it. You go back to your room, and everything will be just fine. That didn't sound like go back to your room. It's not like little kids, but
Yeah.
go back to your unit.
But that may involve some additional support of the front desk, because clearly those people aren't gonna go out and solve it either. So
absolutely.
there may be a gap there that we will have to think a lot about and address, and maybe even get some owner input on.
Okay, any other comments on rules and regs? All right, so let's move on to water and sewer. Jerry has a deck that we need to get displayed, and Jerry looks like he's unmuted, so let's get that up and running. So as Joe alluded to on the financial report, while Gary's doing this, we have been in ongoing negotiations with Glacier Water and Sewer going on 7 or 8 years. The formation of ECWC last year started the additional round of negotiations. They created an advisory board at our suggestion. The advisory board has, Jerry can provide an update of how often they've met, but they've met several times. That advisory board contains basically a representative from each of the clients of ECWC, or each of the neighborhoods supported by ECWC. There was a rate structure put in place by ECWC. We have provided feedback specifically on a lot of the data that they provided to us, and then Jerry's going to provide an update to that now. Those negotiations are still ongoing, and we will continue. Right now, I will call them good faith negotiations, because we're trying to avoid going into mediation and arbitration and spending a bunch of money with our lawyers. And so far, I think they're going relatively well. Are we where we want to be? No, but they're negotiations. So, Jerry, you want to go ahead and go through your deck?
Sure. Let's get started. Good morning, everybody. And let me just say at the outset that if anybody on the board wants to interrupt for clarification or ask a question, please do so. And then we'll hold other questions from owners until after we get through this. Okay, let's go with the next slide, Gary. Great. I just wanted to remind everybody that we have a water and sewer committee that is composed of members of the board, including Scott, our president, Greg Collins, Eric Tibbetts, and also Joe Carey, who, in addition to being the treasurer, has a very long history of financial and property issues associated with TACO. And so we have a very strong team. In addition, we have 2 I would say adjunct members, and they are our general counsel, Ken Golden, and Steve Harris, who is a water engineering consultant down in Durango. And this group of people has been working pretty diligently for quite a while now to make progress toward a new agreement between TACO and this new subsidiary of Glacier Club called Elbert Creek Water Company, or ECWC, that handles the water and sewer services for the community. I've been involved in this since 2014. As Scott mentioned, we have been basically asking Glacier and then ECWC for movement toward a new agreement between us and them since before our previous rate agreement with them expired at the end of 2013. So there's a lot of that we've been doing, and for the most part, for the last several years, we've had little or no response from Glacier and then ECWC toward coming up with a new agreement. Well, it appears that that is now beginning to change. And Gary, if you'll go to the next slide. Thank you. So what we have done is that there are several issues that need to be resolved before we can come up with a mutually satisfactory agreement between TACO and ECWC. One of those has to do with rates. And so what we have done is we have carved out that element of our negotiations to address specifically and intensively. And we are finally, after years, beginning to see some progress on that. Basically, ECWC has finally agreed to allow us to speak directly with the company that develops the rates for ECWC for everybody, and in particular for TACO. This is a breakthrough, but this has never happened before, and I see it as a major step toward getting better rates for TACO. We've made several requests of them, and some of them have already been honored, others have not yet. One of them is that the rates that ECWC imposes on everybody have tended to roll out early after the beginning of the calendar year, and then they're finalized and put into place typically in April, or in this year it was actually in the beginning of May. That causes problems for us because we do our budgeting during October, and the budgets are set in a budget workshop and board meeting, typically right around the 1st of November, end of October. We have to put in to our budget what we think we're going to spend on water and sewer for the entire upcoming year. So if that's done based on what has gone on the previous year, and then ECWC comes in later and changes things radically, that causes budget issues. And in fact, that happened for this year. So one of the requests that we put in was that they shift the billing cycle when the rates are in place from this April or May begin date to January 1st of the following year, so that it coincides with our fiscal year. If they can get that information to us about what we can expect in terms of rates before our budget workshop, then we have a shot at actually putting in good numbers for the budget for the following year. So that's one thing that they've already agreed to do. Another thing that happened was that for this year, they upped the irrigation rates that we had to pay significantly. In fact, Joe can correct if I'm not quite right here, but last year for 2019, we paid about $30,000 rounding off for irrigation for the year. And we projected that based on 2019 usage, that our bill would go up by about $80,000 to well over $100,000 just for irrigation. Based on that, we decided to look into if we had any issues with our irrigation in the 3 outlying areas. And Dave Dunn actually went around and he measured what the irrigation lines were putting out through the meters, and then compared it with what the meters were reading. And lo and behold, he found that 2 of our 4 irrigation meters, one in Pinecone and one in Gamble Oak, were reading, at the time that he did it, we believe it was about a factor of 2.4 times as much as what was actually going through those meters. And of course, those meter readings is what were used to generate the bills for us. So Dave spoke to their plant manager, Sean Young, and we got an agreement that they would replace those meters with ones that were more accurate and more appropriate. And I haven't seen the bills that we've gotten, but Elisa or Joe could probably comment on what our irrigation bills have been this summer versus what they were last summer. But I believe that they are down significantly from what they were. So we got that taken care of. I mentioned that we carved out the rates to begin working on specifically. There are many other issues that need to be worked out before we can come to an agreement, an overall agreement on water and sewer with ECWC. And that work will continue on beyond this, but for now we are focusing solely on the rate issue. Okay, next slide, Gary. Okay, so I said that ECWC allowed us to speak directly with the economist engineer at BBC, who is the one who has been doing the rates for ECWC beginning in 2019. His work actually started late in 2017, but the rates that he generated didn't go into effect until 2019, and now we have them again in 2020. They allowed us to have, ECWC allowed us to have a direct teleconference with that economist at BBC in Denver on August 17th. However, they insisted that their Chief Operating Officer, Jim Goodman, be present, and also their General Counsel, Dave Harris, be present from Glacier. So in addition to those two and the BBC person, we also had Scott, president, sit in on that, our water engineering consultant, Steve Harris, down in Durango, and myself. The agreement that Scott hammered out with Jim Goodman was that allowing BBC to work specifically on rates for Taco, that it would be appropriate for Taco to foot the bill. And there was general agreement that is fair. And so that's what's being done. ECWC allowed up to 30 hours time of the BBC person to work on this. And it began with this teleconference that we had on August 17th. That conference lasted for about 2 hours. Some of the people dropped off after a while, but Steve and I stayed on with Michael Verdun at BBC for almost another hour after that. The conclusion of that meeting, Dr. Verdun said that he basically agreed with much of what we had presented. And that included critiques of how the rates were set up and suggestions for how they should be changed to make things more equitable, not only for Taco, but for everybody. So based on that conference, as I said, ECWC has already authorized some changes to be made, but more importantly, that more progress to occur and direct discussions between BBC and us. The bottom line is that if our inputs and our recommendations are followed, it is very likely that the rates for Taco will drop and become more equitable. And I can explain why they are not equitable and may do so a little bit later in the presentation. Okay, next slide, Gary. So here were two major inputs that we had for BBC. One is that Steve Harris did an analysis of how much water was being taken out of Elbert Creek, Electra Lake, and the Animas to feed the water plant that provides domestic water for everybody and also provides raw water solely for irrigation of Glacier's golf courses. ECWC had provided information to BBC, and based on that information, BBC divvied up expenses associated with the domestic water versus the raw water production between the domestic water customers and the golf course. What Steve's analysis of readings that were logged by the Colorado Division of Water Resources, which is the official government entity that monitors these things, is that there were discrepancies between the ECWC data and the DWR data. And that division of how much water is used for irrigation versus domestic goes into allocation of the expenses that are then passed along to the customers. So getting this right is important. And in particular, what what Steve's analysis showed was that the fractional usage for the raw water was significantly more than what ECWC was claiming. So based on that, ECWC has agreed to go back and review that data and speak directly with the guy who runs the Division of Water Resources and get those discrepancies between the two sets of data resolved so that we can have accurate information that goes into setting the rates. The other thing is that we presented an analysis of the inequity between TACO rates and Glacier's townhome rates. I don't know how many of you know it, but Glacier actually has 69 townhomes back behind the fence. And even though they are buildings that are adjacent, attached to one another, they're individually metered, unlike TACO. However, for ECWC's rates, TACO is lumped together with those 69 townhomes at Glacier, and we are designated as the multifamily user class, and we have our own set of rates as a group. However, when we break down the information that has been presented to us, it can be shown that compared to the townhomes, TACO has been paying about a factor of 3 times as much for the domestic water that's used and also for the wastewater that's produced. And that was presented to BBC. Michael Verdun agreed with the analysis. He said it's very clear. And we hope that that will be motivation for them to adjust rates to make things more equitable so that we are not paying significantly more than what the townhomes are. Okay, next slide, Gary. We made some very specific recommendations. One of the reasons why our rates are so high is that even though we only have 30 lines and meters for our residential properties, what ECWC chose to do was to count the number of condos that are served by each meter. Basically, we have on approximately a meter per building throughout the properties. But what ECWC did was they counted up the number of condos within each building. And then when they set the rates, much like your local utilities, municipal utilities do, water utilities, there is a fixed or base rate that is charged every user. And then there's a volumetric rate, which depends on how much water you actually use. What ECWC was doing was assessing that fixed rate for every condo within a building, even though it was only served by a single line and a single meter. This is very unusual. In fact, in investigating other utilities, I couldn't find a single example where other people had done things this way. Okay, so we asked that they eliminate that practice and that they institute what is considered a best practice and assessing fixed fees based on the meters and typically on the meter size. The next thing we did was we asked that they introduce a more reasonable irrigation tier structure. What they decided to do from 2019 to 2020, which resulted in the projected increase of $80,000 in our irrigation cost, was that they were going to put the same tier structure on the irrigation lines, exactly the same as what they have for every individual home. And so whereas a home, that means that for up to something like, I think it was 3,000 or 4,000 gallons, there's the first tier rate, which is pretty reasonable. And then up to something like 20,000 gallons or something like that, there's a second tier rate, which is higher. And then above 20,000, there's a third tier that's significantly higher. And most of the homes throughout the community never get past the first tier because of out of domestic water that they used. However, for the irrigation lines during the summer months when irrigation is going on, we blast right on through that 20,000 gallon tier threshold. And so virtually all of our billing was going to be at the highest tiered rate. Well, that just didn't make any sense. So we've asked that they review that and come up with a more appropriate tier structure specifically for irrigation. And this irrigation, incidentally, that I'm talking about is domestic water. It's still domestic water, the same stuff that comes into our condos and into the homes throughout the community, as it is different from the raw water that is used specifically to irrigate the golf course and only the golf course. Okay. The next thing that we recommended was that they review how much they charge for vacant lot fees. That is undeveloped lots that have been platted that have lines and meters to them. And the purpose of assessing fees to those lots is that even though the utility may not provide a single drop of water, there are costs that need to be paid regardless. And those costs are what are supposed to go into the fixed fees that everybody pays. Well, ECWC decided arbitrarily to set that vacant lot fee at $750 a year, while single family homes, their fixed fees are $1,250 per year. And again, the purpose of those fixed fees is to cover the costs that are independent of any usage of any water. It's to maintain the lines, it's to maintain the infrastructure and things like that. So we asked that they change the vacant lot fee from $750 a year up to the $1,250 per year fixed fees that single family homes are paying. When I asked Dave Harris at ECWC how many of these undeveloped platted sites they had, or lots, he said that there were about 100 of them. If they increase the vacant lot fees up to $1,250 per year, they will collect an additional 10% of the required revenues that need to be collected each year. With that 10% collected from vacant lot fees, that should reduce all the other customers' rates by about 10% on average. Okay, so those are specific recommendations that we made.
Hey, Jerry. Quick
Yeah.
question. We get comfort. I know they confirmed that they billed for last year and are billing. They billed earlier this year for this year or for last year, and they'll be billing at the first of the year for next. But did BBC account for those monies collected in there?
No.
They did not.
No,
Okay.
they
Right.
did not. In fact, I pointed that out through an advisory board communication, that there was no evidence that any of that money was put into their financial statements, nor was it used in looking at the revenues required and how those revenues would be collected to meet their expenditures. So now Dave Harris says that they have put out bills. He said they were going to do it retroactively. I suspect there are a lot of people who are going to fight that and not pay those fees, but they're entirely appropriate. I think you yourself, in fact, are paying a vacant lot fee on property that you own.
I am.
So this is pretty standard. Pretty standard.
Afford that place.
Okay, so that's the basic presentation, the summary of where we are and what's going on right now. Again, if there are any questions from anybody on the board or any comments that any of the committee members want to make, please go ahead.
Hey, Jerry, it's Joe. The 100 undeveloped platted sites, does that include all the unsold sites that are owned by Glacier, that are owned by Ritz-Carlton?
I don't know the answer definitively, Joe. That's why we've asked ECWC and Glacier to come forward with exactly what there is. Now, one of the other advisory board members actually went in and looked at county records, and he came up with somewhere on the order of 100 platted sites that he thought were within the community. And that seems to more or less agree with what Dave Harris said. But again, we have not seen any, what would be the equivalent of audited tabulations and listings of what those properties are and which properties in particular that Glacier has that may not be platted and have lines run to them. I would have guessed, just my own guess, that any of the lots that they're trying to sell up there, that they would have put in lines for them, but I don't know that for a fact. I don't know if anybody else does.
That we may be thinking of the same person, somebody over in Rockwood, I think, that asked that question, did that research and asked that question. And I know the guy I'm thinking of specifically asked that question of Anna Crona, who handles the billing and financials and all that for ECWC, whether Glacier, Rick Carlton, was paying the $750 a month for each undeveloped lot, and he was told that he was. And I don't know if we ever confirmed that or not.
Yeah, that's not been confirmed, Joe. Again, when I brought this up again with Dave Harris, and I said that there was no indication that they were collecting those fees, Dave Harris disagreed with me, and he said nope, they had actually billed the owners of those lots and were beginning to collect some money. But I do not believe that they have collected all of it, and that will be something that we're going to follow up on with the advisory board.
Yeah, I mean, I think the important thing is that we pointed it out to them that they need to be accounting for them in the rate structure, and if they can't collect it, that's a receivable of ECWC. That should not be anything that we're responsible for collecting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jerry, this
Okay,
is,
so
this is all good. This is encouraging. The one thing I know we did talk about that hasn't surfaced lately, the single largest expense based on the budget data you shared with us was water storage, paying over $175,000 a year for water storage. That, of course, comes out somewhat in the allocations you're talking about in the irrigation, if they get the right allocation of water for the golf courses. Has that been discussed at all with the ECWC recently?
Actually, Eric, there has not been anything after the meeting that we had with BBC. All I can say is that Dave Harris said that they were going to get together with Jeff Titus, the DWR guy, and make sure that all of those issues got resolved. That information then would be provided to BBC and would be folded into the new rates.
Jerry, have you been given any indication when BBC might be getting back to ECWC and us? I mean, getting back to ECWC and us with some work product regarding these revised rates?
Nothing firm. Scott had discussions, and Scott, why don't you just go ahead and say what you learned when your discussion with Michael Verdun?
Yeah, I mean, really the only commitment we have from them at this stage is that Michael is going to go back and revisit everything that we provided and remodel this in anticipation of having us a new rate structure delivered for our October or November budget meeting.
That was the gist of my question.
But we have not heard anything.
We're like 7 or 8 weeks away right now.
Yeah.
And the way this
Right.
moved at a snail's pace.
Yeah, they've committed to have it to us before then. I specifically requested of Michael that we, and for that matter, of Jim and Dave, that we are engaged during the work process rather than given something at the end that we have to respond to.
Right.
So Michael was in complete agreement that it made sense to have us involved, because had we done that last year and we were involved, we probably would have ended up with a different rate structure because we would have been commenting along the way. So that's the goal here, is to allow us to comment on the direction they're going. And, we just haven't heard anything back from Dave or Jim yet. I did request that they get something to us before the board meeting today, but we did not get a response. So I'm going to try to
Right.
see if Jim has some time while I'm here.
And Scott, when Steve and I were talking with Michael late during our meeting with him, we sort of worked backward from us having new rates in time for the budget workshop. And we suggested fairly strongly that he have at least a first cut at things within about 3 weeks. So it has now been a little bit more than 3 weeks, and I have not heard anything yet from Michael Verdun, although he said that he would be in direct communication with Steve and me at least during the process.
Jerry, can you send me a copy of your presentation, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the water and sewer from the board? Anything online?
Nothing online.
Nothing online? You read your voice today, Greg? You've been awfully quiet.
I'm in my quiet.
You're in your quiet mode.
What's going on?
It's rare.
Something's going on.
I have a quick question on water and sewer. Back in, I think it was the February meeting that they had over at Glacier Club, Jerry, that Candace was hearing, they said that they lost 50% between production and consumption. They were losing 50%. Have they taken steps to remedy that?
I believe they have taken steps. I have not heard any resolution of that discrepancy. And I don't know if anybody else has gotten any updates. I certainly have not.
Either I'm making this up or I read this in one of the many communications. Didn't the discrepancy between the DWR numbers and the Elbert Creek numbers point to the potential that some of that 50% loss was, majority of that 50% loss was not being lost? Did I not hear that?
No, you're correct, Joe. That was something that we did send to ECWC and to Michael Verdun. And one of the things that came out of the data analysis that Steve Harris did was that there appeared to be close to that same 50% difference between what was being drawn and used for domestic water compared to what ECWC was saying was being drawn and used for domestic water. And it was suggested to them that, because it's such a glaring coincidence, that they explore that to see if ECWC's input meters into their plant are erroneous, giving erroneous readings. But I have not heard anything from that. I do believe that Sean Young is investigating that and has been doing that.
Okay. All right, nothing online. No. Okay, so let's move on to rental program. Joe, were you going to go over this email from Heather? Or is she online? She didn't
I don't know
online, did
if
she?
she's online. I have the email.
I've got it here.
Yeah.
So I'll just read it off here. So Heather submitted just an email to us on the rental program. I wasn't sure if she was going to join online or not, but I will go over this. As Joe alluded to when we needed the financial report, we certainly have been the beneficiary of a lot more rental revenue as a result of COVID for a variety of reasons. Heather has pointed out some trends that she's seeing. Number one, most people aren't flying, as I think everybody knows. People are driving to destinations rather than flying. They're not staying in hotels. They're renting homes rather than staying in hotels. Because of that, we're seeing an uptick in traffic, and that's a national trend. I think we're seeing it everywhere. I will tell you, even from a real estate perspective, we're seeing at Stewart, we're seeing a change to the way people are looking at homes and looking at where they live. And the same thing is obviously applying to vacation. So you're not seeing people go to New York and Philly and Chicago and big cities. They're going to areas where they have outdoor activities. So it's much more remote type vacation planning than historically people going to the cities.
Or overseas.
Yeah, overseas is off. You can't go overseas. We can't go to Canada. There's a lot of limitations to what people can do. So that's causing folks to jump in their car and drive to the mountains and to the beaches and that kind of thing. A lot of people are working from home. They're looking at that and saying, well, why the hell am I working from my house when I don't have anything to do here? I might as well go to a vacation place and work someplace I'd rather be, where I can have other activities that I can do when I'm not working. So we're seeing people who are traveling, taking vacation, or just going someplace, renting a house, and working from there, doing their day job online and working remotely. So that's definitely changed. As far as revenue, March, obviously we had March and April, we had a big downturn. We had a decrease of 4% in March. Well, this is comparing 2019 to 2020. So
Yeah.
March, April, we had the rental program down, if everybody recalls. I forget when we reopened it, like
March
mid-May.
May 24th.
May 22nd.
Okay, so we were
22nd?
basically shut down in the rental program from mid-March till the end of May. Now, we opened it right before Memorial Day. June, we saw a 10% increase. July, we saw almost 100% increase, 95% increase in rental revenue. August, 172%. Those are huge numbers, and we're expecting a 60% increase in September. So I would anticipate that our shoulder season, as we know it, is going to be different. We're probably going to have people here, maybe not as much as we had in the summer, obviously, because school's back, but because school is remote, a lot of people are able to take advantage of going places. So for us to have a 60% increase already projected for September is a pretty big number. We usually get kind of a rush of rentals, just fall color change. Folks come up for that. It'll be interesting to see what October and November ultimately look like. Certainly the snow kind of controls what happens after that. What else we got in here? Heather indicated that she estimates about half of the revenue increase was due to COVID and half was due to increased marketing efforts. As Heather changed, or I shouldn't say she changed, she merged with a company called Premier Vacation Rentals, merged her Durango Vacation Rentals with Premier. Premier is larger, has a bigger budget, and is doing a lot more marketing. So I think some of those efforts are reflected in the increase in rental revenue that we've seen as a result. So any questions about that? Anything online? No. All right. Long-term asset replacement, Mr. Tibbetts.
Okay, just a couple of comments on history, how we are where we are, and then we'll talk a little bit about upcoming. The purpose of our long-term asset replacement policy, and it's a board policy, is to provide adequate dollars to repair or replace the key assets of our property. We have common elements here that are maybe valued as much as $25 million, and we need to provide resources to refurbish those when they are needed. The second part of our policy, as written by or approved by the board, is to avoid special assessments. So what we want to do is feather these capital replacements in over a period of years. And you may ask why we do this. One, of course, it's good common sense. The second is Colorado law requires every HOA to have this policy. Real quickly, the policy is actually out on our website. And I don't know that Gary touched on it in his earlier presentation, but the policy is on our website under policies. And then as an adjunct of that policy every year, Dave Dunn and I have sat down and filled out a worksheet of all the key assets, when they're going to be replaced, and approximately how much we think it might cost to replace those assets. Those are really placeholders. Those aren't necessarily budget estimates. And I would tell you that we often do that estimating on the high side so that we don't under budget and under reserve what we need to replace those assets. The last part of that is that each year that worksheet becomes part of our audited financial statements that our auditor provides. And if you were going to be here this week, you would get a hard copy of our financial statements in the annual meeting. And that worksheet is part of that document. As far as what is on the horizon, we have two major expenses that are upcoming in the next, well, we've got one that's still to be finished this year that Joe touched on it already, about $100 and some thousand left to fund on the elevator, which is the second elevator replacement. But in the future years, in 2021, we have approximately $175,000 earmarked as funds to replace floorings and wall coverings in the lodge. That's on the inside of the lodge. And then beyond that, in 2023 and 2024, we have as much as $500,000 kind of earmarked for the roof of the lodge. And those are all subject to further verification on both timing and price. But those are the two big items that we will be dealing with as we put together our budget in November.
The other thing I'll point out is one of the things that get looked at very closely by lenders who are loaning money to people buying properties here or refinancing is our budget. They look very closely at the amount that we contribute to reserves. They also look very closely at our long-term asset policy, and this has certainly come up quite a bit this year. I probably have dealt with, I don't know, a dozen different loans personally where people have reached out to us and had questions. We have to fill out a condo questionnaire anytime anybody finances. So, one of the byproducts of us getting the DCCRs updated last year has been increased scrutiny on the budget, on our reserves, on our long-term asset replacement, on our documents. So we're, I would just say it's a work in progress. We're continuing to having to respond, and we'll likely make some adjustments to the budget and some changes to how we do this going forward, just to mitigate these requests that we get from lenders every time somebody finances. I mean, I think the financing has been good for us. We certainly have seen increase in property prices, a lot more activity, but with that comes lenders asking a lot of questions about our finances and our budget. So not necessarily a bad thing. It just, it will keep us on our toes.
I've gotten a number of questions. One pretty recently might have had something to do with, I don't think it had anything to do with that closing. Anyway, lenders asking about our reserves funding, annual reserves funding.
It must be 10% of your annual.
But it's not.
No, it's not legally required.
No.
It may be a good
No,
rule of thumb.
Fannie's requirement, well, Fannie and Freddie's requirement are that 10% of the annual budget is put into reserves.
But we don't.
But we keep money in capital. If you look at what we finished the year with in capital and what we put into reserves,
well,
I mean, in theory, what we could do is flush capital at the end of the year, drop it into reserves, flush it right back out.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how I can tell you. That's how I've been getting these approvals out.
Okay, so that's the answer. The answer is you're adding together the capital projects budget plus whatever you put into reserves.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because we ended last year with what, $190,000 in the bank, right? Theoretically, we could have moved it all into reserves. And then turn around, pull it right back out, and start paying bills.
I mean, if you look at Look at this year's.
But that's one of the items we're gonna have
Yeah.
to address on the budget this year, because I'm about sick and tired of taking phone calls on the subject, so.
Well, we're not going to be able to effectively put 200,000, add $200,000 to reserves every year. We can't do it. We just won't be able to do it.
Well, it depends on,
We'll have to spend,
depends on a lot of
we'll have to
things,
spend a lot of it. Is that,
Well,
does Fannie Mae say, okay, if they see that you're putting in 200, but you're spending 240?
yeah, again, so far we've been able to get past it.
Okay.
At some point, it becomes a diminishing, you can't put 10% in forever because you don't need 10%.
No,
Right?
I
So,
mean, that's what I keep pointing to. I said, look, we have $750,000 in deposited reserves.
Yeah.
That we're not drawing down on, at least not yet.
we've been able to get past it so far, but that is the requirement that the GSEs have. And, we're going to have to figure out a way to make that adjustment in the budget. It's nothing we need to beat up now. We'll have to deal with it in the budget meeting.
Yeah, I had this call with a lender a week or so ago, and I pointed to a few things and, sent her to the things on the website. And she said, if I have any more questions, I'll call you. And I don't know what unit it was for.
Yeah, so there's two types of reviews. There's a limited review and a full condo review. The full condo review typically is brought up when, number one, it's a new lender. Two, the down payment is a smaller down payment for that particular borrower. Where I've run into it, having to explain it, is when there's a full condo review. If it's a limited, typically we can get by pretty easily. So if somebody's putting 20% down, that's typically a limited review. But again, it depends on the lender. Like, the one I've been dealing with this week, I went back and forth multiple times, and I couldn't get them to agree. Now I got Quicken to agree. I've got, Cornerstone to agree. I've got, half a dozen lenders to agree with the way we address it. A lot of times they're just looking for something to document their file and the fact that they've addressed it. So
Well, now I know
it's
the
a tap
answer.
dance.
Now I know the answer.
Yeah.
to that.
and then
Yeah.
maybe that, I'm not the accountant here, but I have some, basically a lot of companies do put money into reserves and pull them out. They
Right.
make a motion to move X number of dollars into reserve, and January the 1st or the 2nd, they make another motion to pull those monies back out of reserves. If that's the kind of accounting compliance we need to do,
That's probably
then
what we'll have to do.
we'll have to do it, yeah.
That's how I got Quicken to approve. One of the deals is I explained it that, we just have chosen historically not to move the money out of capital into reserves. If that's something we need to do going forward, we can do that. Like I said, I knew we would end up getting some questions on this when we got the DCCRs changed. The other thing that has been biting me in the ass is one of the sections says we have the right to contract with rental management companies. We don't have any contracts with rental management companies, but our documents say that we have the right to contract with rental management companies. Technically, Fannie will not approve. We would be considered a condotel if we had our own rental management company. Well, we don't. We know we don't. But the way our documents read is we have a right to contract. And that's the issue that United Wholesale had this week when I was trying to deal with this one particular borrower's loan. So in that particular case, I just moved the loan to a lender that I knew had already approved this. And United Wholesale is out of the picture now. And someday I'm going to make James Hinton step in and do this, since he's our new mortgage guy, owner. You ready for that? Glad to know you're still listening, James.
I didn't ask if there were any questions on the board or otherwise. We kind of got onto another aspect of the long-term asset, and but are there any questions? I think pretty much the board is familiar with that. Everybody knows what those documents are stored on the webpage. Thank you, Gary.
All right, let's try to get through these couple of things and we can maybe take a break. Property report, you're going to do the property report, right?
Well, we're doing the furnace preventive maintenance program and the CO2 detector checkouts this fall. South elevator is starting September 21. We've already spent 120 or 130 of the 190. 120 of the 190.
Of the 191, yeah.
It'll be about a 6-week project starting on the 21st. Central tower rear deck, there's a rail that's being replaced because it failed. Exterior staining is in Pine Cone now, moving on to Gamble Oak and High Point still this fall. High Point parking lot's getting sealed next week. Antler lights in the 3 towers are replaced. I think we're about 3/4 of the way done with that. Lodge valves, main valves on 4th and 5th floor being replaced so that we don't have to shut off the entire floor when we have a repair. Mark's working on that. Doing some grounds repair or grounds maintenance. Scott's Prolon is doing some work here in the next couple of weeks, and we got some pruning. You've seen some orange tape on some aspen trees. We got some bugs in it. We're going to treat those next spring. We don't have to do anything this fall.
Okay. Is it bugs or is it the oyster scale?
In the oyster scale, there are bugs.
Oh, there's,
Yeah,
okay,
there's
get bugs.
thousands of bugs.
Okay.
The end result of the oyster scale.
It will kill the trees if we don't treat it.
Yeah, you said,
Taryn's husband is a
Arborist.
entomologist,
yeah.
and he's recommending that we wait till the spring to do that. So that's under.
You mentioned
in
trimming.
process.
You mentioned trimming. Are we going to do something with the island? And I'm talking about Pine Cone because I'm there.
Yeah.
But the islands in Pine Cone, the shrubbery, and they're so overgrown they're about to encroach on the parking lot. I mean, on the pavement, and they've been allowed to grow, and not been trimmed. You look in there, and you look. Here's the edge. Here's the edge of the pavement. Here's the edge of that big juniper out there in the middle island, and you look 2 feet in, and there's a lawn sprinkler head. That's how far these things have overgrown, and they. You know,
Yeah, our grounds staff has been understaffed pretty severely this summer.
Yeah.
One of the guys we hired 2 or 3 weeks ago is going to be focused solely on grounds as the springtime comes.
Yeah.
He's getting trained up on the whole property at this time.
Yeah.
But we're trying to figure out if we're going to outsource some of the grounds work next year, or whether we have to get more staff on the grounds because it's been neglected this year, and we're well aware of that.
We went away from, years ago, we went away from contracted grounds maintenance because we felt that we could control it better by doing it in-house. I consider that.
Yeah, I've done it both ways,
Yeah.
and there are pros and cons to
Yeah.
each way.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a heavy discussion with Taryn and this board to see which way we want to go. Because with self-performance comes maintenance on equipment. We don't have a maintenance shed. We don't have anywhere to store equipment. There are some challenges in performing all of that activity. Been able to handle it in the past. We'll take a close look at it.
Just to clarify, you said the treatment would not be done this fall, it would be done next spring, or?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're just gonna leave
We
the
had-
ribbons on all winter?
No, not, I just got the price yesterday for
Okay.
for doing the
Okay.
work. Yeah, it was $4,000, and then we got Taryn's husband's opinion. He said, you could do it now. There's no reason to do it now. It'll be as effective next spring. Okay. So we're gonna pull the ribbons off. Okay. And not spend the money now. We are spending a few bucks on the islands in the lodge this fall. Getting a couple of trees removed, getting some irrigation systems completed, and probably bring in some topsoil and some mulch.
Yeah, we don't get a lot of complaints, but we've been talking about this landscaping and those things since.
Oh,
I mean, we're gonna have to, we had it, so just to bring, I don't know if you're up to speed on that, but we had committed to Glacier, what, we put 50 grand?
50 grand.
50 grand.
yeah, I
into
think
those.
that was on that slope on that side of the
Well,
parking
it
lot
was that
to the
slope and the
lodge.
islands,
And the
and the
islands.
2 islands that are adjacent to the Glacier property.
Yeah.
They wanted to enhance the sense of arrival.
Well, we're gonna put a little bit of a sense of arrival in one of the small islands in front of the entrance.
I don't know that we'll ever, we carried that on our budget for 3 years. Finally, we told Glacier, look, we're not going to carry this on our budget every year. If you do come up with the landscaping plan that our 2017 agreement with them obligates us to, if you do come up with it, give us the plan, give us the cost. up to $50,000, and we'll put it in the budget for the next year.
And I think we can just start taking actions on our own.
No, they're not gonna, they're not gonna.
They're not gonna do
They're
anything.
not gonna do anything.
And then if they come back to us, we'll say, hey, we've already spent $22,000.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
landscape, that
let's-
grounds budget item, that line item is gonna need a lot of work, you know, through the next couple of months, because we have a lot of improvement to do on our grounds.
Including irrigation.
Electric car charging station. This was kind of dropped onto my plate when I was hired on August 10, and it's taken me several weeks to dig through non-existent files to gather the information.
Today's your 1 month anniversary.
My gosh, it is. If you wouldn't mind sending that
He runs
around.
out the door.
What I have found is that the total cost for the installation is around $16,000. We have been approved for a grant from the Colorado Energy Office for $9,000. There are some strings attached to that grant, some reporting compliance things, not huge levels of brain damage, but there are requirements. I spoke with LPEA this week, and they said they would provide up to $4,000. First sentence, yes, we'll give you guys $4,000 if it has 2 outlets. I said, that's great.
That's an easy phone call.
That puts our out of pocket at $3,000. Annual maintenance, we have to have access to what's called charge data or something where we pull data off of an online access application so that we can maintain compliance with the Colorado
So the
Office of
grant
Energy.
requires that we do that.
Yes.
Okay.
So our out of pocket is like $1,500 a year to be able to offer a charging station in that location. It is not restricted to only our residents or our guests. It's open to John Q. Public.
Do we have to advertise that it's there?
That's one of the
No, it'll be on the Colorado
It'll be on
Office
a
of
map?
Energy. It'll be on a map.
And one of the
Okay.
requirements of the grant is that we advertise it on some sort of social media and send them proof that we've done that.
It'll be on Facebook. It'll be on the
page,
website.
something like that.
Not a big deal.
Yeah. So anybody who's got an electric car coming down Highway 550 from Silverton and said, I need a charge, and they go dial up the app and they say, no, there's one right there.
It'll show up on their dashboard.
Will, okay.
Yeah.
And they'll just go and they
Pull
pull in.
They plug
and
in.
And as
they
long as
launch
there,
at the
as long as
restaurant.
there's a spot available, what if it, I mean, if it's,
You cannot park there if you are not charging.
if you're not
Part of the
charging.
fees, part of the fee structure that you can put in place really penalize a car that sits there beyond the charging time. I mean, it gets really expensive if you park there all night long.
How does it get
How do we
expensive?
monitor that?
How does it get expensive?
I don't know.
Are we the enforcement?
We are the enforcement.
Well, I don't like, okay,
Yeah.
so our guys.
So we're
are
giving up 2 parking places and we got to become the enforcement tool.
Let's look at the good thing.
Fine.
Glacier is putting in a station in front of the,
They
Valley
also-
Clubhouse?
they receive
Valley Club-
grants.
2 stall.
yeah. Well, they're roughing in.
And theirs is first in the,
They're
when you
roughing
drive
in
in.
for, they're roughing in for 4 stalls. They're only installing 2 stalls right now. So that's what the charging station project looks like.
So if
I
we,
hope we don't do it.
I say no as well.
oh, well, right then.
So we've already invested some money in putting the infrastructure in for it.
We roughed in for the infrastructure as we were bringing a water main
I
in
know,
for the
I get that.
irrigation.
I
So
get that.
the number of dollars we have spent specifically for this is minimal.
Well, we did not need the 120 volt AC out there because irrigation systems don't need it.
Right. There was a conduit put
But
in,
maybe,
there was a
but still,
concrete pad.
5 or 10 years from now, if everybody's driving electric cars, it'll still be there.
It'll be
We can
there.
take advantage of it then.
I did ask LPEA, said, why don't you put your station here? And she said, well, we do put stations in and we own them and monitor them and report and pay for them and all of that. But they're only put on facilities that have their meters. If they were to consider putting in their station here, they'd have to put in a sub-meter and do a lot of work that she said that's not going to get approved. So the stations that they have,
When you say their meters, their electricity meters?
yeah, they have to put in a meter so
so that they know how much energy goes into the station,
Oh, okay, okay.
so that they can collect the fees from the station.
I
There's a little bit of infrastructure expense
Yeah.
if they were to want to own that station, and she said it's highly unlikely that
Well,
they
we've-
would approve that.
The infrastructure we've already put in wouldn't.
No, it is not. We're just pulling off of our service.
Okay.
There's no meter. Yeah.
So the fact that Glacier's putting one in, obviously, assuming they move forward, I know they've gone through the same exercise we have, right? At least solves for the owners that have requested this, right?
Yeah, they can use it
Yes, and I met
because
with,
it's public.
yeah, I met with Logan Noonan, their maintenance guy, it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, as he was engaging the contractor to run the underground to the,
So they're moving forward, for sure.
And on that date, it appeared they were moving forward as soon as possible.
Why are you guys opposed to it? Is it just because we have to monitor
Parking,
it?
taking the parking away.
Yeah.
The monitoring, reporting isn't that big of a deal. The expense was a big thing, but you cut that back.
Well, the expense was cut down, but the annual expense,
Yeah.
that thousand a year was a surprise to me.
And there's no way for us to recoup that from the individuals who are charging? When we are collecting.
Can we get a cut?
You're very limited. I mean, it's not a moneymaker selling energy to these stations. It is absolutely not a moneymaker. You can't resell energy at an increased price. You can charge it by the hour. This is the way you charge these people.
So the owners, so the driver of the car hooks up.
Mhm.
It's drawing power through our meter,
Mhm.
right? So we're paying for that electricity.
Yes.
How do we get reimbursed for the electricity?
They rent the spot for X numbers of cents or dollars per minute or hour.
Isn't it a credit card?
Yeah, it's a swiper.
Okay, so that there's an accounting function that funnels money back to us for not necessarily to profit from it, but to get reimbursed for what we're spending.
What I haven't figured out is if I've got an electric car, I come charge it at 8 o'clock at night, and I go up and go to bed, come back at 6 in the morning. How do I collect for those 9 hours?
So Jerry, you're saying, you make a comment there about idle fees. Could you clarify that, Jerry?
Yeah, sorry, Scott, I had to unmute myself. Yeah, so most charging stations have what are called idle fees. That means if you remain parked at one of the slots and you're not actually charging, they charge you something. It's on the order of $1 per minute, and whoever owns that station can generally set what those rates are, and they vary. I saw anywhere from 30 cents a minute to well over $1 a minute. So yeah, there's a way to take in money for people who are not using the charging supply when they're there.
So that is, but Jerry, does that assume that, like Tim said, you plug in, you go to bed, it charges up, and at the point where it stops charging, stops drawing current, then you get the idle charge? Is that how it works?
If it's
Basically, yes,
gotta be-
but I don't think it cuts in right at the same time.
If you unplug it and leave the car there,
How do you know?
how do you know?
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, that's like a trailer in High Point.
exactly.
It's worse than that because we also have the credit risk. If the credit card's no good, or if the guy refuses or gal refuses to pay,
Yeah, or
denies
not-
the
or
charge.
disputes the charge.
disputes the charge, then the credit risk is ours.
And I can
Is
see
correct?
that happening. Somebody said, oh, I got $1 a minute for 3 hours of,
Yeah, I
I'm
got
disputing that
$400
charge on my card. Yeah. And credit card companies are pretty easy to get disputes through these days. They don't require a whole lot of evidence.
I'd rather spend money on
Well, the fact that Glacier's putting one in solves our problem. And the fact that we have the infrastructure means we can do it later if we want to. So I'd almost rather let Glacier guinea pig it. And if we figure out it can be a revenue source and we're willing to give up 2 parking spots to get that revenue, then maybe we look at it then. But
I had this discussion initially with Tim, probably on August 12th. And he says there's also you got the maintenance at $500 a year. You said you had experience with people driving off and yanking the cable out.
They've
of that.
improved the equipment.
Have they?
So they can't do that.
you said something out about researching solar options. What's that all about?
I'm talking with the two companies that were trying to get this done about doing a panel project here. The orientation of the building makes it much less efficient, but they both offer a program where they buy and install and own the panels. They meter the electricity that goes into our system from that system, and they charge us roughly what LPA charges us. It's not a money maker, but it checks that green box off on your list of items. And it's their panels. It doesn't cost us anything. At the end of 20-year term, we can either buy them from them or extend the agreement. It's a long-term energy purchase agreement.
But that's separate and apart from the charging
That's
station?
a totally different project,
No.
and it's got to wait until after the roof is done.
Tim was telling me, he says, if you want to check a green box, forget the charging station, put up some solar panels
At no cost.
at no cost.
It's break even at best, at worst. to us.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Well, I know the Tesla guy has got it, he's kind of has the shingle project that, I don't know where that's at, but where you use
Mhm.
solar powered shingles, basically.
We aren't going to do anything until we fix this roof anyway.
Yeah, I get it. Okay. All right, so I don't know that we need to do anything other than just, we're not voting on it.
No.
I think we, the question, let's see what else.
I would say by the time we meet in early November, we ought to have a pretty clear indication of whether Glacier is going ahead or not. So we can ask ourselves in
Okay.
November,
Date, we have to.
October 1 is a critical date where we have to commit. There
When
you
is
go.
it?
Or else October 1,
October 1st,
or else that $9,000 grant goes
the
away.
grant goes away.
Okay,
So
I
you
think
can't
how long
table,
we can find
you
that.
can't table it until the budget meeting then.
okay. So Ron, I think we just answered Ron's question about when the credits, will they be available in the future? I guess we don't know that. We just know we have a
can
deadline.
reapply.
We have to reapply. Okay. And Jerry, the Glacier Club station is supposed to be at the Valley Clubhouse. We know that. I don't know if we know if it's a Tesla or other type, but is there a specific?
Is there a different one for Teslas?
Thought it was the same type that we were doing.
I know they went through the same.
Te- Tesla has a different type connector, and their superchargers can charge it at enormously huge rates. So, for example, when I stopped in Farmington on the way up to charge up, it started charging at 450 kilowatts, something like that, some ungodly number, which is 10 times what I can charge at home.
Okay.
When you say enormous rates, you're talking about speed rather than cost, is that correct?
I'm talking about the charging rate, the speed of charging your battery, not the rate, not the cost. Sorry.
Okay. And then there's another question up there about where was our proposed site for, where we run the infrastructure to? Where exactly is that?
Right outside,
outside
right
the
out
entrance.
the porte cochere,
Right at the port, say there.
right,
Okay.
right next to the handicap. Yeah.
You mean you're not going to put it in front of our condo?
it's a long cord, Jerry. That's it.
Yeah, everybody gets one just like the mailbox. We'll send a bill.
We know where you live, Jerry.
All right, so I guess our decision here needs to be whether we just want to kick the can down the road for a year and reapply after Glacier installs there, right? I would suggest, if you wouldn't mind, just confirming with Logan that they're moving forward.
Okay.
And if they have one, that solves for our immediate need, and we can just decide whether we want to do this in the future or not. I guess based on the parking issues. I mean, challenge in this is the parking issues really are only an issue in the summer for the most part, right? Do we have
Christmas holidays,
at Christmas?
Christmas holiday, a couple other winter holidays, but it's mostly in the summer.
Yeah.
And even in the summer, it's, well, outside of this year. This year was a problem all the time,
Yeah, well,
but generally it's on holiday weekends and holiday time periods.
so any other concerns, comments, everybody in agreement there? Anything else online?
So for my,
Okay, I think we got it
What?
covered.
do we want to wait 1 year and then we'll reevaluate?
Who's she talking about? Is she talking about Val, the
Paul,
it says Val.
that's Paul.
That's his nickname.
Oh, is that his nickname?
That's his name.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. All right.
So I guess we're gonna pause.
Yeah, I think we've agreed to pause on it.
Okay, the only other item I had was the CMMS. We did engage Fix Software. I started building the asset database a few weeks ago. We have that done. I expect to have, I want to show anybody that's here what it looks like. Got some training to go through for the next couple of weeks, and I hope to launch in October.
Okay. All right. And that CMMS, for those of you who weren't in the new owners meeting, is the, say it again, maintenance.
Computerized maintenance management system.
That just will not stick in my brain. I don't know why.
It's not a financing acronym.
Yeah, exactly. I can handle Fannie Mae stuff all day long. All right. So we got one last item, and that is, oh, my computer just powered down. We have one vote we need to do.
Insurance, but compliance, is that what you're?
No, we have to vote on the bylaw change that I put in the ballot thing, in the ballot mailing. And I have it here. So I made a recommendation. It was somewhat last second, and included it in the ballot mailing so that we could make sure the owners had it. And that was really just to change one paragraph in the bylaws. And that is section 312, where it reads voting by written ballot as described in section 311 above shall also include voting by electronic means or by way of email. And the whole idea of the change to the bylaw is, should we find a way that we can safely facilitate voting electronically as opposed to spending $1,500 a year mailing this stuff out, that the bylaws allow us to do that. So that was sent out to all of the ownership. As I said, with the ballots, it's really just a quick change in language that allows us to use electronic means should we find a way and choose to do so. The bylaws allow us to do it, so we don't have to do a mailing by regular mail.
It would also allow us to, on an exception basis, if we did do a paper ballot mailing, it would also make legal someone who overseas somewhere or something like that and can't mail in their ballot, and they do a scan of it, they sign it and send it by email.
Yeah,
that would allow that as well.
Yeah. So it's really just a future-proof change so that we can, if we do add software to manage, maintenance requests or anything that we add in the future, perhaps we can start doing voting that way. Last year or 2 years ago, I guess, when we did the document votes, we had to pay money to mail out those things, and it's just time consuming and expensive for us to go through that process every time we have to have a vote.
You're not worried about voter fraud?
I said secure way to do it. We got to solve for it. I don't know how we're going to do it. I just want the bylaws to let us do it.
That people voting.
So I'm going to make the motion that we accept the change to the bylaws so that we can do that in the future. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second? Any discussion or concern?
Do you remember what it says? You want to read it? I'll look at it before you vote.
I can read the whole thing. I got it right here.
Okay, I don't think you need to.
Yeah. Everybody received it. So, yeah. Anybody online have any comments?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Motion passed.
You send a copy to the motion.
Yeah, I can send you right now. I have that right here. All right. We want to take, what time is it? You want to take about a 10-minute break?
Sure.
Okay. We got unfinished business.
One of those.
Oh, I guess you didn't do that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's all right. I suppose I'll recycle them, but unless you want to hold on.
So we've just got to come back to unfinished business, new business. That's it. Lisa, I guess are you going to report on this?
I haven't turned that over to Elisa yet.
Okay.
And I will be very soon. We started this effort to get every owner to respond to a survey. This was last spring, whether or not they had a mortgage on their home, on their unit or not, so we could come into compliance with the notification rules that were passed with our DCCR's changes. When was that? September?
Yeah, they were recorded October last year.
Last year. So we, as of, I think, the May meeting, I reported on this, and I don't recall what the total number of responses we had. Right now, I resurrected this process a few weeks ago and have gotten a number of responses from owners who had not responded the first time or who completed incomplete responses from the last time. However, at the moment, after 2 reminders, I still have about 40-ish owners who have either not responded or who have responded with incomplete information. So this is going to be a
Is that just on
arduous.
insurance or is that on lien holder too?
This is just lien holders.
That's just
I wasn't involved in the insurance
I
one.
have the insurance.
Yeah.
And it's probably the same.
Yeah, but it's it's probably the same people who haven't responded.
I thought Steve had said at one point he had heard he had all but 7.
And I now have it whittled down to 3.
Okay.
But now I'm going back through and there's the ones that have expired. So it's just gonna be constant.
No. There's a number of them here.
So will the CMMS allow us to automate emails or something like this? To who? To owners who are not in compliance with policies like, where the hell's your insurance? No.
No.
Okay.
No, for that, you're gonna need something like that package that Steve O'Rourke suggested, that pay HOA thing. You're gonna need something that's, this is just a maintenance matter.
Yeah, there's limited access communication, and you have to have a full license, which costs $600 a year, to have people interacting automatically through email. When you make a work order, you'll be able to see what you did, but I won't be able to communicate with you on an automatic thing. If I put a trigger date out there for a date that your insurance expires, I can't get it to automatically send you an email. Okay. I could get it to send me an email.
There's other
Or me.
platforms for that sort of thing, so you can generate, email blasts, and you can, automate. People can view their HOA statements online and things like that, but that's not something we've gotten to yet.
Well, all we can do is continue to hound on them on the lien. I mean, theoretically, we could go out and do a lien search, but that's going to cost us money, and I don't want to bear the expense of doing a lien search just because people aren't notifying us.
Yeah. I'll send out one more reminder after, next week. And I mean, I don't know why I'm looking at some of the names that haven't responded, and it's like, I know they're getting the emails and they're saying, screw this, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, well, we've had some people pull the "that's none of your business" card too.
I've only had 1 or 2 say something to me about, seems a little invasive. Well,
It's a public record. If we really wanted to go find out, we could go find out. I just don't want to pay to go do it. Unfortunately, La Plata County is not an online county, so it would be an abstractor having to go out and do the search in the county. I've already dug into that.
I think there's just a number of people out there that are just saying they're busy with other things, and doesn't rise to the priority level for them to look it up. And
So why don't you get we'll look at the list in executive session and see if, we might be able to get Julie to look at it to see if she did any of the sales.
Well, some of them there are a couple of them I can see that I know are under contract right now.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, well, we'll continue to whittle down on it.
But there's still the ongoing, somebody who yesterday didn't have a loan, who decides today they either want to get a home equity loan?
Well,
or
that's
they
the
wanna
other, that's the,
finance
that, keeping that up to date is gonna be difficult.
it. Yeah, do we have any methodology for dealing with that once? the
No,
first-
We will,
first
we will
pass-
notify of every sale. The refis would what would be.
Refis are gonna be difficult to track, yeah.
Well, I mean, realistically, we probably just need to set an annual reminder that we send out, every year, a reminder that if you have a lien on the property and haven't reported it, please let us know. It's, we're at, what, damn near 90% compliance.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, even then, well, I guess with every new owner, you would presumably know, at least if they have a loan, you wouldn't necessarily know who the lender was.
Well, I think I mentioned to both Gary and Elisa that that we need a form. We've got all these forms that the title company provides to us. The rules and regs, acknowledgement, the new owner information with all the people who would occupy the unit. We need a form for, in this transaction, did you secure a mortgage? And what's the loan number and the servicer and the address? So we need to start doing that like now.
well, the problem with that is it's as good as the day that they originate that loan, because a month later, the loan's
So
likely gonna get.
every line on this database.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, most of those loans are gonna get transferred to another servicer, so it's.
Yep.
um,
Oh, I would be willing to bet you that there's a number of them on here that it was the original loan that they gave me the information on, and it has been.
Yeah.
It's been bought.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a compliance issue that we're just gonna have to, it's an annual monitor, and I think we do need to talk about how we might, look at software or something to help automate some of that, because it's gonna cost us money to go chase this stuff regardless. Okay. And I'm sorry, what was the kind of insurance you said you had?
I have 3 that have not responded and, 20 that look like they're expired.
How did you get it down to 3? Did you just start sending individual?
Yeah.
Did you call people? Did you have to get on the
She's
phone at
nicer
all?
than Steve.
Yeah, I remember it. I don't know, they finally responded.
Yeah.
Or liked me better, I don't know.
Put the same question on ongoing. Is this now going to be something you're going to have to bird dog every owner every
Yeah,
year?
I've got expiration dates, so, hey,
Well, that's why we
it's
asked.
coming up, but
Right.
it would be nice if it's something that would
Several of
trigger
them.
me instead of searching.
Yeah,
That's
I
why we
assume
asked for
we're
the
named
additional
insured
insurance.
somehow,
That was
right?
the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
you
am
wouldn't have to be
getting,
notified.
I am getting mail every day for the, new certificates and stuff.
Yeah.
Not everybody's done.
All right, new business. Parking issues. Who's gonna cover that? Is that me? Why don't I put my name on it?
Why did you put your name on it?
No idea.
Who is that? So we're trying to remind the guy to park, legally.
Yeah, that evil twin.
I don't have a car here now.
I think Ted was gonna go over some information on the parking issue.
I took the liberty of looking at section 10 of the rules and regs. And based on the information we discussed Tuesday with Joe, Ron, and Gary and Lisa, have come up with a proposed change to the rules and regs. I gave you the red line so you can see what I changed. Basically, it just gives us an opportunity to require reservations for oversized spaces through the front desk, get a hanger tag, and our maintenance staff, who already goes around the property every morning, can check it and make sure that the tag is to date and it's in place, that we're in the right spot. It'll give us an opportunity to enforce. We've got the fees identified in section 10. I think it was 25 a day, and then I forget what it was. But it lays out a good strict policy in order to use a space. And it defines pretty clearly what the ramifications are if you're not in compliance.
A space for an oversized vehicle.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So that's the recommendation to the change of the rules and regs that I would recommend.
How many, how much space do we have for oversized vehicles?
Six,
Six.
2 in each of the 3 outlier communities. We will, in there, we would like to stripe those spaces and identify them by number so we can assign them to a specific guest for a specific time period.
I thought we were talking about 3 at each of the outlying areas.
I think it's 2 in each, isn't it?
The other day we were talking about 3.
We've got room for at least 3, maybe 4 or 5 up there in High Point.
Okay. Well, I haven't done a survey on the site to see even where they go, but the procedural, to say that we got 3 there, is it okay to have 5 there, 2 down there? You know, that gets into another conversation. But, you know, striping them and monitoring them and enforcing the oversized trailer and vehicle parking problem. I think there's the teeth in there to clarify what we expect and give us a way to enforce it.
And I did 1 week have to park my car up there because we were full down there, but.
Well, it still provides 48 hours for if you're coming in and unloading or something. But you just can't park there for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Or nobody can park there for over 2 weeks. 2 weeks was the max that we talked about.
Yeah, we've easily got a space for 3 up there in High Point.
Part of the problem we're going to have, and we talked about this the other day, was you know, what happens when a guest shows up? And I realize I think it either is or is supposed to be on all the websites of the property managers. But you know, I got in a conversation with a guest this summer. He had a U-Haul trailer. He pulled it right into a parking space right here. I went up and explained to him, we don't allow trailers here in the lodge. Basically, he told me to screw. And he says, you're not accommodating, you don't want to accommodate your guests. And then he walked off.
Well, now we have a means to charge it, right?
But who is it? What unit is he in? I don't know. He didn't tell me. If I asked him, he wasn't going to tell me.
Well, he's got to check in and get a key.
But yeah, but this was
Well,
after he had already.
The front desk isn't going to go out.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell the front desk that I'm illegally parking when I get my key.
No, I get it.
Not on purpose.
Oh, by the way, I got a
We
dog
had
too.
ones this summer that
Just one?
that they ran the U-Haul trailer to carry all their bikes and stuff, and then he parked it down right in the middle of everything and trampled all over the landscaping.
Who is it?
He stayed in Terry, Tina and Gary's old unit. Bill and
Oh,
Mary's old unit.
590, 91, 92.
Yeah.
And where did he park?
Right in the very corner,
Okay.
right in there, right in front of that electrical box. And he stepped all over the stuff. He'd had it there for a day or so, and then I think they moved it to ride their bikes, so I moved my car there.
So this is going to sound draconian, but what if we bought a boot?
We talked about that.
Well, I mean, if somebody doesn't, if we ask them and they don't do it, we put a boot on it.
That's a lot better than having it towed.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the
Better
other
for them
alternative.
too.
you pay the fine or the boot doesn't come off, right?
But you gotta buy a boot.
I mean, at the end of the day, what we're doing is saying, hey, we're going to let you have it here, but you got to pay an oversized vehicle. And if they don't like it, then they can go find some place to park their trailer.
Well, that may
Which
mean
is-
If they don't
that
pay
may
it, then we
require
put it.
that we add something for, if you're not in one of the assigned spaces, then what happens? You know, then, I mean, that's another enforcement issue that we need to define clearly.
Yeah. Well, and my concern would be somebody goes out there, at, 4 in the morning to leave, and there's a boot on their car, and they're beating the hell out of somebody at the front desk to remove the boot.
We have guys on call 24/7.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's just a thought. I mean, that's one way
I think it's
to
great.
enforce it.
I was hoping to avoid that first tow.
Yeah.
Well, I think the other thing is just tell people right up front, I mean, we don't really want you here. Go park down at the Rose for $50 a month. You know.
Yeah, but we got people that are, they're rented the units, and they have no way to know that somebody's going to show up with a trailer. And you got to remember, people
people come up here to ride that highway on their motorcycles, and they drag their trailers.
Right.
Right? They get the boat bikes out and they ride the $1 million highway and come back and stick them back in the trailer. So.
But most people feel better, okay, I realize there's a cheaper option down the road, but I'm willing to pay you because I don't want I decline the cheaper option down the road.
Well, that's the point is if we know they've got that, we're charging them $25 or whatever the dollar,
Yeah.
$125 a week or whatever it is.
$25 per day, yeah, okay.
I love the boot idea.
Again, it sounds harsh, but it gets the point across.
Well, the whole problem is that there's been lack of enforcement for so long that people are saying, well, what are you going to do? Chase me down when you haven't chased the other guys down?
Well, there's two things I suggest. I suggest the boot, and I suggest we get some kind of card or sticker or something that if we notice it, that we put that on the side of the vehicle, and it's a warning that they will be booted if they don't come in and pay their fee and get the handgun.
Right.
I'm not talking the big nasty stickers that
No,
take a week
hey.
to get off. I just mean like a card or something you put under the.
Well, and some of the property owner or management companies are not making the guests aware of the policies either.
Oh, I guarantee that's the case. And that's certainly something we probably need to revisit with Heather and make sure that's part of the reminder package that goes out.
I think Gary saw one 2 weeks ago. There was a unit for rent and it limited them to only one small dog.
Yeah, I saw that.
Just one.
Just one.
Saw some rental guests had 2 cats on leashes.
2 cats on leashes. Who's the animal on a leash?
I guess I'd like to recommend that we further refine the change to the parking and take that back up in November.
Okay, I'm just looking at no overnight contractor trailer parking is permitted. You guys all on board with your contractors on that?
No, I think there was a contractor provision that allowed us to, they can be there Monday through Friday if they're doing work for Taco, but they have to be out of there Friday at 5 p.m. And then they bring it back on Monday.
That's not what this says. It says
that's deleted or is that?
for contractor parking trailers for work on owner's units must be removed at the end of each workday. No overnight contractor trailer parking is permitted.
Well, that's in conflict with another sentence in there. Okay, I didn't want
That's
hired contractors to move their trailers back and forth every day, because they're gonna charge us if they have to do that.
Yeah, that's why I asked, because
Yeah.
you guys were all on board with that, because that's a really tough thing to enforce. You'll have contractors saying, no, thank you, I don't want to work up here. You get that.
You can buy an auto boot car immobilizer for about $360.
Let's get a few of them.
Gary's gonna have fun with boots.
Gary's the boot guy.
Gary out there popping tires.
And by the way, with regard
Jerry,
to
I'll take
what
10.
Ron described here,
Yeah, so what do we consider an oversized vehicle? Because, you got people that drive those Mercedes camper type things.
but you've got to be careful. I haven't read the whole thing, because if somebody is towing something that would fit into a parking space, but they also have their vehicle, you can't be, yeah, it's oversized. I mean, you got to look at the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I mean, that's what we're talking about having the boot for.
Anything that's towed, by definition, constitutes, it has to fall into this parking.
Yep.
This part.
That's what it says.
Okay.
Trailers.
So I mean, I would say that maybe to answer the question Ron is asking is it has got it. An oversized vehicle should be defined, or should, if it doesn't fit in a normal parking spot, it should be defined that would make it an oversized vehicle, correct?
Right. Yeah, we've got some refinement to do to this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes without saying that
It's not a unique vehicle. It's gonna be on a trailer.
if we don't have a problem with parking, in other words, it's the 10th of November and we have 30 empty spots. I don't see us being, out there beating the crap out of people because they got a trailer. This is intended to solve for the problems we have in the summer and the holidays, right?
There's several questions.
All right, so that answers Ron's question. RVs are parked for weeks on end this summer in the Upper Pine Cone lot. Well, I mean, again, this will, what we've already said is we are going to allow 2 to 3 or how many spaces we can accommodate. I can't change the unsightliness of what these vehicles look like. So unfortunately, that is part of what we have to deal with. We're going to have spots, they're going to be parked there. We can't cover them up. And then it says something about the front desk not knowing where the parking spots are. That's obviously something we'll address.
Oh, that's
with this
part of the
policy in
process.
place.
Right.
Yeah.
And Gary had a great idea. We're gonna rotate, no matter where you stay in. The first spot is that High Point. The second spot is at Pine Cone. The next spot is at Gamble Oak, and then you start filling up again, so it's equally distributed amongst the whole property.
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate fact is we cannot create new parking spots. We don't own any land to do so. So there's not really an alternative site outside of the sites that we designate being oversized vehicle parking.
We had also talked about striping, not the entire parking lots, but just the 3 spots in each of the designated areas. We can even put a sign up there that says parking for Gamble Oak, spot number 1 for campers, trailers, oversized vehicles.
Oversized spot 1.
Yeah, oversized spot 1, spot 2, and do that in each of the areas, but striping only for those, so that people know exactly where they are.
Okay. Well, I'm perfectly fine with policy changes. I don't know if anybody else has comments on it. And then I'll leave it up to you guys. If you think a boot and the stickers or whatever is a good option, then.
Well, let Lisa and Gary and I work on refining this.
Yeah.
And we'll get something out in the next few weeks.
Okay.
In the meantime, we can send you any thoughts we have on this draft if you want us to, our feedback.
Okay, owner reminders.
That's what we did earlier.
We did that earlier, right? We covered up everything?
But I believe so. And then Kathy was on here for, Kathy still there?
I am.
And you were on the agenda as well. I'm not sure what for, about safety issues.
Oh, yes. So as reminders, obviously I'm a registered nurse by background, and that is what I do day in and day out. So just quick reminders as to safety. We're in a very crazy time, obviously, with COVID-19. With many deaths across the U.S., there's been now over a documented 1,150 healthcare workers that have died, and nurses were in a horrible shortage anyway. So I look at this as opportunity for all of us to be respectful, do our duty to keep, our fellow American citizens safe and doing our part. As they talk about through the Surgeon General, the 3 W's: wear your mask, watch your distance, and wash your hands. So just a friendly reminder to, keep our other folks safe. We do have a lot of older people within this community. I have an 87-year-old mom at home, and my husband's got 2 parents in his 80s, so we have to be extremely careful so that we don't, have the asymptomatic issues and then pass it on to someone that we love. So just a gentle reminder there. Also being mindful as we move into the winter and looking at safety. There's, icy conditions that occur in the parking lots. So be careful, with walking. Maintenance does their part as to snow removal, but again, we need to be very careful. And then lastly, driving. So as we are going up and down the mountain road can be very treacherous, whether it's wet conditions like we've had today, snow conditions, but also being mindful with drinking and driving. We did have an accident just recently with a young 21-year-old that was in a car accident who unfortunately died. That's the phone call none of us as parents ever want to get. So just again, a reminder to be safe in all that we do and be respectful for everyone around us. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. All right, restaurant update. Brooke and Terry had to drop an appointment in town. but I'll just cover it. They'll likely address us tomorrow at the owners meeting. We have an owner that moved in May-ish, I think.
No, actually, they moved in over the summer, in
Yeah.
August, actually.
Anyway, they contacted us back in March and indicated an interest in the restaurant space. We're trying to sell their home in California with the intent of buying a condo here. They asked if the restaurant space was available. We told them that it was. They are very interested in opening a restaurant. They live here on site. They want to not only open that restaurant, as a restaurant facility, they plan on getting the licensing necessary to have a call it a package store, for lack of a better description, but be able to sell beer to go.
Retail.
Is that they call it a retail license? Okay. Because of COVID, we now are able to. You remember when we had the restaurants before, you couldn't take a drink out with you; it had to stay inside the restaurant. Now you can take drinks to go, so that would allow them to open up the bar, and we could take drinks to go if we wanted to back to our rooms. They also want to have a general store as part of it, where they would sell basic sundries, sandwiches to go, breakfast to go, just basic sundry items that we talked about from a general store perspective in the past. Long and short, we've told them, we've shared with them a draft lease document. They have already started getting licenses in place. They are moving at a pretty quick pace to get ready to do this. We've agreed in principle on allowing them to do this. They're talking about opening before the snow flies. Well, I shouldn't say before snow flies because it's flying today. But before the holiday season, basically. So their concept is going to be a little different. They are planning to open a meatless vegetarian type menu. We've warned them or cautioned them that might be an issue for some folks, but we have obviously the Mind Chef that will happily sell you a burger if you want it. So at any rate, that's kind of where that's at. They are in town today. They were going to address the board meeting, but I'll have them say something tomorrow, or we'll introduce them tomorrow at the owners meeting. So any questions about that?
I'm assuming we're looking at some kind of a lease agreement.
Yeah, we have a lease in their hands. It's basically the same lease we had for Yellow Carrot. The difference here is they're going to, all we're doing is not supplementing. We are not going to charge them rent. They'll be responsible for utilities and the other things.
And that doesn't change throughout the life.
We haven't formalized the lease yet. We may very well come back and say,
based on
there's going to be an escalator at year one.
Right. Okay. The other thing I would just observe, Scott, and I don't know that I have an answer, but it seems like in the last 3 restaurants, we as a board kind of thought there would be a little cooperation, a little feedback going back and forth between the operator and the board representing our community here. And that didn't happen. I don't know whether there's some way to incorporate in the lease an advisory committee, that they will listen to us more specifically.
Well, they live on site. That'll make life a little bit easier.
Well,
So,
but I'm thinking, and I'm thinking, I have a neighbor who owns a restaurant in Albuquerque, Jason Green, Gary's met him. I don't know if any of you others. He's not interested in doing this, but he would be really interested in helping us as a board and as a community have a successful restaurant here.
Okay.
He's asked for lots of information about how this is going to operate, because again, they've been doing this for 15 years plus in Albuquerque. They're successful restaurant entrepreneurs that are going to actually open a second restaurant. I'm just thinking there ought to be a little more linkage. I can help you draft a clause or something, but it seems to me that we always thought that we're going to have this cooperation. I go back to Yellow Carrot. I thought, boy, we're going to do great, and didn't work at all.
We've learned some lessons, there's no doubt. But no, I think it's a good idea. The other thing I should share is these guys did own a similar restaurant in California. So it's not like they're coming in here blind and not knowing what they're doing. They seem very well organized. They're very motivated to do it. As I said, they're on site. Their family's going to run it, basically. I think their son might be living here too, or might be moving down to help run it, if I remember correctly. But we'll have an opportunity to address that with them tomorrow. Any comments online?
Just from Jerry to Kathy about.
Yeah, I see that. Okay.
I would just add, you mentioned that they're motivated. They've been at this now for a year and a half because they were first here last year in March, I think.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Last year in March, and they wanted to do this at the time. They were going to buy here in the lodge, and they couldn't sell their home at the time. The ones that they were going to buy here in the lodge sold, and then this whole thing got resurrected this past winter when they sold their home, which they think now is probably in ashes.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Really? Where do they live?
In California.
In California.
What
Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz. Oh, yeah.
Wow. God, they got out.
Yeah.
That's scary. All right, another item that we did not put on the agenda that we do need to cover, and I probably need to vote on it. We have talked to some investment advisors about doing are we calling it a 401k? What are we calling it?
Simple.
A simple IRA concept for our employees. We've talked about this in the past. It's come up in the past. We think it's something that's important that we show some benefit to our employees and support them a little more so than we have historically. We've got a very tenured group of employees here in many cases. So it's something that we talked about as a board. We've spoken with how many investment? Who did the homework on this? Why am I covering this? You guys do this.
There's your presentation.
All right.
I have a little PowerPoint, but
Do you guys,
And so, yeah, if you want to show PowerPoint, that's fine. Does he have it?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
do you guys want me to recuse myself?
Not till we vote. Not till we vote.
We can listen. You do the full screen thing for me?
I can probably do that.
I got cute pictures.
Can you send me a copy of what you got?
Yeah.
Kathy, are you seeing that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so retirement benefits. After being here for 3.5 crazy months, retirement's sounding pretty good. So that maybe I better do some research.
Don't leave
Not
that.
really.
It's a good lead in.
Okay, so
There's
next,
$1.50.
next slide.
Good luck.
So what I want to tell you today, we're going to talk about what a simple plan is. We can go over the costs and the eligibility for our staff. We need to go through choosing a broker or how we kind of worked through that, and maybe some tax advantages. Next. So what is a simple plan? Simple IRA is a type of tax-deferred, employer-provided retirement plan. It allows and encourages our employees to set aside money, invest it to grow for retirement. It's similar to the 401k plans that maybe some of you have or experienced, but it offers a simpler, being simple, and less costly with less administration roles. Lower startup fees, things like that. The employees that participate, they choose the amount they want to contribute through their paycheck. They have their own IRA, they get their own statements. Taco would have no control over how they choose to invest, nor will we know how much they're making in these accounts. We don't see those at all. Matching contributions. So Taco matches their contributions dollar for dollar, either up to 3% of their annual salary for those that wish to participate. We get 5 participants, we match 3% for those 5. Or we do a blanket 2% for everybody that's eligible, regardless of whether they want to participate or not. So 5 say yes, 5 say no, we still have to give those 5 that say no 2%. That's just one of the rules of that. The contribution limits for 2020, they change a little bit sometimes every year. Right now, it's $13,500 maximum for anybody under 50. If you're over 50, you can add another $3,000 to that. Next slide. So the cost, the setup fees are, it's $10 to set it up for the plan that we kind of looked at the most.
is a $10 setup fee that would probably be paid by Taco per person. So $10 each. And there is a $10 a year maintenance fee that would most likely come out of the employee's plan, out of their funds. That's just $10 a year. There is 5.75% commission on those target date type funds that the employee would pay, and that would also just come out of their funds. The matching, we either choose the 3% match or the 2%. So 3% could be as much as $19,300 for Taco. That would likely be less because some employees will probably not contribute the maximum. I kind of wrote up some examples. So Jane Doe, she elects to contribute her maximum, $13,500 for the year. She makes, say she makes $40,000 a year. So Taco matches her contribution dollar for dollar up to 3%, like I said. So 3% of $40,000 is $1,200. So Taco puts in $1,200 to her plan. So say John, he only wants to contribute $1,000. He just doesn't want to do the $13,000. So his salary is also $40,000. Taco contributes the match of $1,000. He doesn't get the $1,200 because he only contributed $1,000. So we're dollar for dollar up to.
So it's dollar for dollar on their salary amount, not their contribution.
Well, on their contribution. If he only contributes $100, we match $100.
Okay.
Someone contributes $13,000, we're not contributing
So it's a
that
dollar for
much.
dollar match up to 3% of their annual
of
salary.
their salary. Yes.
Got it, okay.
Right. Yes.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
You said a 5-point-something%
5.75 on the commission on the plan that we're looking at right now.
So
that's-
the is that 5.5% on the balance or 5.5% on the gain?
Or on the contribution.
If it's on the balance, that's
I
killer.
think it's on the contribution.
On the amount invested, it's a front end fee.
Front end fee on the amount invested. Okay, all right.
Good question. Eligibility. So the federal rule is that employees become eligible after earning $5,000 in a calendar year. So right now we currently have 13 eligible employees. 11 of those 13 have expressed interest, like they want to hear more. Some were really enthused. Some were like, hey, yeah, I'll look into that. For a lot of these guys, it'll be their first retirement account.
Yeah.
This is both maintenance and front desk?
Yep.
Okay.
There was a couple, 2 or 3 that weren't eligible yet that might be soon because we had some new staff.
How long do
Have you done a-
eligible? They're not-
Just, they have to earn $5,000.
Have you done a calculation, a pro forma on what the hit to the budget would be if everybody did it at the max?
The 19,000,
19,000.
yeah, if
Okay.
everybody did their maximum.
Okay.
And then we're talking about next year's budget.
Yes.
Nothing would happen this year.
Starting next year.
If we chose to do the 2% match, that would be $12,400 based on this current salaries.
Okay.
So that's a set amount that we would know right away, but the 19,000 is the maximum.
Okay.
Next. So choosing a plan. So most of our staff aren't sophisticated investors. They're not going to know what to do, how to invest. They'll need some assistance.
Gary takes exception.
Gary's very sophisticated, so he could give advice. So,
Invest in Tito's.
I wish I had.
Parking lot.
That would have been one of those to invest in about 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah.
So I really feel strongly that we want to find someone who can help our staff invest. You know, I've got some retirement account plans, but I've always had help with, let the guy help me choose. Taco doesn't have any control over that type of investment, which also takes the liability off of us. If we say, go with this plan, we don't want that kind of risk. If we go with a small boutique broker, which I put a little logo there, that firm can be hands-on, teach them, encourage them. We've got someone in mind that's very enthusiastic about, young people investing and, encouraging that kind of thing. So I really like that. We did look into the large firms, Fidelity and Vanguard in particular. It does increase the liability to us as the administrator. We'd have to do all the online work and the administration step. And these large firms, the employee has to go in online and choose and pick and choose their funds and how they're going to invest online. So that's a little.
Yeah, said another way, they won't do any hand holding until you have $50,000
So you got a
essentially in the
balance.
account.
Yeah.
You got a good balance, yeah.
We did get a hold of some other local firms who several were like not interested at all, not worth their time, so little money, too much cost for them. So it's difficult to find someone who would hold our hand.
Are you only dealing with, are you only looking at, I don't know what
Well,
this, are you only looking at fiduciaries? You know, that sort of an investment advisor,
yeah, like,
you know, where they make their money when the
yeah,
when the investment goes up, not when transactions are made.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was difficult to find that, but
Well, they're not that hard to find.
well, difficult to find someone who would agree to do it.
Would agree to do it,
Yeah.
yeah. Because they've got to have a potential for
Yeah.
some earning power. Yeah.
Next, tax advantages. So the contributions are made pre-tax for these employees, so they get to save on the federal and the state taxes. They do still pay the full Social Security, Medicare, and unemployment on their wages, but that's that little benefit. But that grows tax deferred until their distributions are made at retirement, which is hopefully a long time away for me and Gary. Next.
Yeah, street day, Gary.
Gary's raising his eyebrows.
Gary was one of the ones I was gonna have to talk into doing this if we do it.
That's in the beer money, right?
Yeah. So we talked about what the
I'm taking a
simple
lot
plan
of
is.
hits here today.
So in the simple, the employee chooses the amount to contribute pre-tax. The cost to Taco would be that $10 setup fee, and then either the 2% match or the 3% match. Those dollars I told you, the 19.3 and the 12.4. We need to decide on the broker if we can use the small boutique firm or do the large online firm route, the Vanguard or the Fidelity. The tax advantages, again, the employee saves their money and it defers taxes until retirement. My recommendations, I feel strongly, I'd like to use Snowcap Financial, and I think the 3% match makes the most sense. That's just my thoughts.
And I guess I should say before we have that discussion that there is a potential conflict of interest. Rick's son is actually with the recommended firm. And so we may or may not want to ask Rick to leave us at this point. You're welcome to make any comments before you go.
Before he goes,
yeah.
My suggestion would be, as treasurer, is you know, you don't need to decide on this today. You don't need to vote on it today.
We do.
We're gonna
Got a
do.
date.
Yes.
It has to be done by
October 1st.
October
We have
1st.
to, we
Oh,
have to
okay.
set up
Get
the
by-
plan by.
Well, my input was going to be that this is going to have a budget implication, small,
Yeah.
but I've been already doing some pre-work on the payroll budgeting for next year, and I think we could certainly absorb this amount. So
And then
I
we'll be,
want the board to know that, since we're not going to be able to wait this until the budgeting cycle. But I think we can absorb that max. So,
You know, and I would just say, you know, I went ahead and moved all my stuff with Kyle. It's a Fidelity account. So you have access to whatever the employee wants, you have access to all the big companies. Kyle is conservative in his stuff, so, you know, you don't have to worry about that. He will not guide employees to stuff. And his deal with this for Tamaron is potential leads to other customers. He will make virtually nothing off this personally.
Might even cost him money.
Yeah, yeah.
only cost him time.
He said he will do it as break even. And he said if he makes 2 more trips down here specifically for this, he loses money.
But he gets to play golf.
He doesn't play golf.
What are you charging them rent to use your unit?
I thought this was, but yeah, and that's the other thing is, you know, he does come down here. He does have other accounts in the area, and, you know, so he will be available if something came up. He is available. He just calls grandma and grandpa and we go babysit. So
He is in Denver, is that correct?
yeah, he's in Denver. And he was with another firm. What he's trying to do now is he's trying to branch out on his own.
Okay.
So I will go ahead and leave.
All right.
Anybody else have a question?
Any discussion there? I mean, I've already expressed that I don't have an issue with Kyle doing this. I know it's
He was
very small
really
in the scheme of
thorough.
things.
He's answered all my questions, you know, done a lot of my research through him, like asking questions. And he's been immediately helpful with all that.
I hope that you do approve it because it helps a lot with our hiring efforts.
Yeah, no doubt.
Nobody in Durango offers any benefits whatsoever. And this helps put us on the radar screen when we're looking for the better people. It helps a lot.
I was thrilled to get the feedback of the staff. Oh, yes,
Well,
definitely.
you said 11 out of 13?
Yeah, because I'd heard in the past that we didn't do it because nobody would have done it, but almost everybody wants to,
No, that's good.
or at least wants to hear more.
Yeah.
And
My
shoot, they're
recommendation-
passing up free money if they
My
don't.
recommendation would be to pass it. Yeah.
Proceed.
Yeah.
I would just say that this is basically a federally controlled program. A simple IRA is a simple IRA. We're not going to get any more or any less from Kyle than we would get from any other vendor in terms of.
It's highly
We all-
regulated.
It's
Yeah.
highly regulated.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a conflict here, but I think Rick was trying to be
Yeah.
an abundance of caution, and I appreciate that.
And it sounds like going with the smaller firm is a lot more user-friendly than the bigger ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve this?
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion beyond what we've already had?
I would just say, I encourage Taco to pay the $10 front-end fee first time for the first year
Mhm.
to set up the account. No reason to take that out of people's pocket.
$130.
I
Come
can tell you,
on.
yeah, we can afford that, but I just wanted to be clear on the motion.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, my only comment is we've been an employer for a long time and
It's about time.
it's about time we step up and do some things.
Do we
for
have
our
an
employees.
addition for either the 2 or the 3%?
I'm fine with the 3%.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to go. Give the employee the best
And-
opportunity to build his account.
It's up to them to take advantage of it.
The 19K or, you know, that'll increment up over the years, but that amount as a part of our overall salary budget it's a drop in the bucket.
It's more than likely going to be closer to 15. It's
Mhm.
going to be hard.
Yeah, it's not going to be the 19.
Nobody's going to do all of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any comments from her?
Kathy has something to say.
Hey, Kath.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Any
Boyd?
chat comments?
Well, I'm good.
No chat comments.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
I'll add that to my budgeting spreadsheet.
We got a couple of things.
Oh, yeah.
So-
That's just one.
Any other new business? Any comments, new business? Last call. We're going to adjourn. Nothing online?
Nothing online.
Okay. All right, well, then I move to adjourn this meeting. It's one.
Are you gonna go into
You're gonna go to
We're
executive
gonna go into
session.
executive session.
Yeah, you can't adjourn. yet.
Well, we can't adjourn until afterwards, yeah.
Okay.
Go into executive session.
I'm going to, Kathy, you're going to be the only person, the only board member online, right?
Yes. As far as I know, I don't know. I think Boyd's calling in. I don't know what he's doing.
He's on-
Boyd
he's
is
on-
calling it. I'm gonna end this meeting and then start a new one, and I'll immediately email you the login stuff.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jerry, for doing the report.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. Great report.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, just FYI, like I said, I have a